Hello, welcome to the City of Durango City Council regular meeting. It's January 18th, 2022, and it's 5:33 p.m. May we have a roll call, please, Ms. Phillips?
Bosman?
Present.
Councilor Buell?
Here.
Councilor Youssef?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Present.
Mayor Baxter?
Present. Do we have a translator available for an introduction?
Yes, we do. Maria, are you available?
Hello? Thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Maria Lisa Fuller, and I am part of a very committed group of individuals whose mission is to generate a pragmatic attitude towards adversity. We focus our efforts in creating a safe space for all individuals while we rally for language justice. We're very committed to creating spaces that allow each individual the right to express themselves in what we call their heart language. By doing so, we're confident to envision real conversations whose visions and outcomes can benefit all its participants. We're gonna be using simultaneous interpretation to create this space today. When I finish saying this in Spanish, we are going to turn on interpretation, and you will see a globe icon in the bottom of your screen that says interpretation. If you're not fully bilingual, we ask you to select your preferred language. If you're bilingual, feel free to choose the channel that you prefer. We do ask for those bilingual folks to mute original audio so you don't have to hear both channels at the same time. Thank you very much. Mi nombre es María Elisa Fuller, soy parte de un grupo muy comprometido de individuos cuya misión es generar una actitud pragmática hacia la diversidad. Centramos nuestros esfuerzos en crear espacios seguros para todas las personas mientras nos movilizamos a favor de la justicia lingüística. Estamos comprometidos en crear espacios que permitan a cada individuo el derecho a expresarse en lo que llamamos su lenguaje de corazón. Al hacerlo, estamos seguros de visualizar conversaciones reales cuyos resultados puedan beneficiar a todos sus participantes. Utilizaremos la interpretación simultánea para crear este espacio este día. Cuando termine de decir esto en español, activaremos la interpretación y usted verá un icono de globo terráqueo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Si usted no es bilingüe, escoja el canal de su preferencia. Si usted es bilingüe, no dude en escuchar al canal que usted prefiera. Lo que sí recomiendo es que ponga en silencio el audio original para que no escuche los dos canales al mismo tiempo. I am ready when you folks are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Now we're on to the identification of actual or perceived conflicts of interest.
I'm so sorry, Kim, to interrupt. Would you please assign me as interpreter?
Yes, I'll send you that way in a second.
Thank you so much.
Are there any actual or perceived conflicts of interest by any council members? Okay, thank you. I did want to make one announcement before public participation, and one of the challenges that we have in our community is we have a lot of cars stolen these days, and it turns out that most of those cars have their keys in them and they're unlocked. So please, 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 lock your doors on your cars, keep your keys out of them. It will help a lot for our car theft. I really appreciate that. So public participation, I see we have one hand up at this point in public participation. And Shannon, do you want to let Sweetie Marbury in?
Yes, sweetie, I'll let you in. You have 3 minutes. And in order to speak, it's *6.
Thank you. This is Sweetie Marbury, and I've been a resident of City of Durango for around 47 years. In 1982, none of you were here in 1982, we were in the midst of a drought, and we went into reduced water for irrigation, as well as there was no water being served downtown at any city restaurant. And that was fine. We lived through that. Well, here we are again in another mega drought. There's no snow in the forecast. There's very little snow in our front yards. And I'm very concerned about what I read on the agenda tonight about a $700,000 reduction in the water fund. I don't see any money in design for a pipe coming out of Lake Nighthorse. The people voted for water rights for Nighthorse. This has been going on for 75 years about storage in the Animas La Plata. Now it's a real thing, but we have no way to get the water out of Nighthorse. Some of you may say we don't need it because we have water coming out of the Florida. I'd like to remind you that the Florida ran dry in September. I would encourage this new council to contact Steve Harris, Bob Wolf, and Jack Rogers, who I consider have historical knowledge of our water resources, the Florida and the Animas, and would be happy to talk to all of you about why we need water security. With the new money coming in from the Biden administration, if we're not shovel ready, we've missed it. So I'm asking about when is the timeline for the College Mesa plant upgrades? We're building more in Durango. There's more development coming in. There are more opportunities for housing. Certainly, I can hope that accessory dwelling units in E in 1, 2, and 3, that there'll be no lot sizes, so people will have the same opportunities. But for some reason, this city council seems to have a problem with money in the fund balance for major improvements. I don't. I call it the savings account. And when I was on city council, we had to raise the water and sewer rates because prior councils had not done that. And it was a major shock to the system. So when you let go of $700,000, and I don't believe the IAB really recommends it. I believe, after talking to some of the members, that this was pressure put on by the city manager. And I have problems with taking money out of a secure fund. And what happens in the future? The future is tomorrow. My grandchildren live here. We have more people coming into Durango. You have to plan for water. Water is the new gold in the West. And I don't see any plans going on. And to lose Jared Biggs from the IAB is criminal. He has knowledge. You moved him to the finance department, so he won't even be able to work with the IAB past February or March.
Thank you.
That's not a good...
Sweetie, your time is up. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
That's okay. Thank you.
I believe we have another member in the audience. Sarah, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay.
You have 3 minutes.
All right. I think that tonight you're addressing the parking, and I had sent an email about the Union Social Club. I live directly behind it across the alley. And, I realize she's complying with, she's only one less parking space than is required. And I think that's based on square footage. She's saying some of it is office, some of it is warehouse. But I believe the occupancy there, I was told, was 75 people, and I think she has 13 or 14 parking spaces. I have a big corner directly behind her on the alley, and I'm telling you, it's awful. And I know this is not a new thing. I know, Kim, you live on 3rd Ave. I know it's not a new issue in town, but I just wanted to express and be on record as saying it is a problem. My tenant is a teacher, and she comes home from work during the school year and she has nowhere to park. I wondered if there was any way that I could just get a permit for a resident parking space. And I'm sure this has been talked about because it's, like I said, I know it's not a new problem, but it is a new problem in this neighborhood. So that's all.
Thank you, Sarah. We don't normally respond to public comment, but you can always call Kevin Hall at Community Development, and he can help you out with these things.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was on record.
Yep.
Thanks.
I think we still have another hand raised. Hello, Dee Dee, can you hear us? Hello, Dee Dee, can you hear us? Dee Dee, if you can't hear us, or if you're not on mute on our end, but we can't hear you. Would you like to try calling back in?
All right, we'll try again, Dee Dee. Thank you.
Maybe Shannon, try letting her in one more time. Maybe it was just a glitch.
She still has permission to talk.
Oh, okay.
Let me remove permission and then give it back to her again.
Great. Dee Dee, can you hear us? We can't hear you. I'm sorry, we're just going to have to, I guess, not have her comment. Could you, if you can hear us, please make sure you email us so that we have your comment. Thank you. Okay, and I don't see any other hands raised, so we'll move on then. To proclamations and presentations. So under city operational updates, we have 6.1.1, Community Development Housing Program Update.
Great, thank you, Mayor Baxter, members of the council. Thank you for giving us some time here at the front of the meeting to give you an update on all things housing. There's so much going on right now in this space, and I'm really excited to say that there continues to be tangible evidence and progress in achieving the housing goals that you've laid out in the strategic plan and in other city documents. So Eva Henson is going to give the bulk of this presentation. We're excited to have her on board. But I wanted to start with a few overarching comments about what's in process and where we're headed. And as I thought about how to summarize what's happening and where we're headed and what's guiding us, really two concepts came to mind, and that's around partnerships and around hope. And so first I wanted to talk about partnerships. This has really been at the foundation of all we've been able to achieve, and it's going to be crucial to be successful in the future as we move forward from here. These are partnerships from, first of all, with our citizens, making sure we understand their desires, making sure that development is happening thoughtfully, that code language is drafted in a way that's sensitive to our unique community qualities. This is also partnerships with other community organizations like Homes Fund, the county, the Alliance, Region 9, Housing Solutions, FLC, 9R, and others. These partnerships help us to leverage our individual resources and help us to do a lot more than we could on our own. We also focus on partnerships with existing property owners to understand their desires and their constraints and help them to achieve their vision in regards to facilitating new housing opportunities. We also have a lot of partnerships developed with the real estate community and developers to facilitate acquisitions and make sure the right development is happening in the right place. And then lastly, partnerships among city staff throughout the organization. As much as we're really excited to have a housing division in community development, we've been able to do a lot in our realm. This is really a citywide and needs to be a citywide effort. Jose and the executive team have made great progress in aligning all of the areas of the organization towards accomplishing big things and becoming a high-performing organization. This is going to have a huge impact and going to be greatly beneficial as we tackle sort of complex and ambitious residential developments. Developers want to come into situations that are predictable and efficient and are clear on the desired outcomes. And your leadership, counselors, in creating the strategic plan has started to provide those conditions in Durango. And just as evidence of that, at next week's Planning Commission meeting on Monday night, they're going to be considering development proposals that will result in 300 new residential units. These are projects that are raring to go. They want to break ground this spring. They're denser types of projects that we've communicated are part of our goal for the community. And this, the clarity of focus that the staff has had and the alignment of goals has really helped get these projects through in an efficient manner. And we've built great relationships with these financial institutions, developers, contractors that will really help us in the future. So I would encourage you as counselors to continue to hone in on what you all agree on and help us to have that clarity that we need to go out and continue to form these productive partnerships. As much as possible, trust staff to deliver on the targets that you set for us. We want you to keep us accountable on achieving results, but sometimes we may come up with a unique approach that may be unfamiliar or different, but we have lots of ideas. Our team has a lot of diverse experience, and we're excited about the opportunities ahead of us. Second principle, as I mentioned, is hope. You could also think about this as pragmatic optimism or ambitious realism. This allows us to have a clear-eyed and down-to-earth understanding of the magnitude of the problem that we're facing around housing. It really deals with no less than the very fabric and the viability of our community as a whole, while also staying positive and confident that this issue isn't so big that we can't tackle it together. So we understand the gravity of it, we know we're in a crisis, but we know we have the resources as a community to tackle these big issues. You know, since I've been here, I've seen the community rise to some pretty massive challenges. When the mine tailings hit the fan, we showed our resilience and we persevered through an environmental and an economic crisis. The 416 fire helped us to rally. We supported our service workers, the river guides that were out of work. And right now, this community is overwhelmingly aligned behind addressing the housing crisis. And that gives me and our team hope that we can do great things. So Durango's an amazing place filled with great people, as you all know. And as long as we keep that in mind, we'll continue to be able to accomplish some of these great things. So I just wanted to set the stage with that, to give you a bit of our perspective on how we're approaching these sticky issues. And with that, I'll turn it over to Eva to dig into our annual housing program update. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Let me just share screen. Can everyone see the presentation up? Well, I'm really excited to be here. I recently relocated with my family, my 2 kids, to Durango for the true sense of community that is here and that resonates and that we're hoping to preserve. And I really, in my role as the Housing Innovation Manager, look forward to bringing my knowledge, my passion, and workforce housing expertise to the City of Durango team. So I just kind of wanted to start off with that before we start with the presentation here. And really the presentation is going to really provide a snapshot of what the staff report and all of the supplemental documentation that I included really highlights the work, the ongoing efforts, and the tremendous amount of continued work that it will take to get us to help solve this housing crisis. And I'm certainly one part of that. I'm certainly one person, but I have a great team behind me. And certainly, as Scott mentioned, having those partnerships, those collaborations with the same mission and the same goal in mind. And so really that's where we kick off with the Housing Program Annual Update tonight. So as Scott identified, the housing is integrated throughout several different plans for the city. That includes the city's 2021 strategic plan and the 2018 housing plan, both of which identify short and midterm objectives to strategically target specific housing initiatives. As we know, there isn't one size that fits all here. So we're really going to try and come up with different strategies, different solutions. Some may be successful, some may not, and continue to come up with creative ideas around solving affordable housing here in Durango. Durango has also proactively put in place regulatory policy actions, and just wanted to identify those that help mitigate external forces that are facing many other communities right now, specifically in Colorado and those mountain areas. We have a nationally recognized vacation rental program that certainly others are looking to make changes to their policy and regulations around short-term rentals, as well as the nationally recognized accessory dwelling unit program. So I thought I would start with some of the 2021 market behavior. Some of this data has certainly been presented in several different housing meetings, the Economic Development Alliance, the Colorado Real Estate Association, including the local chapter here in Durango. None of this is really new, but certainly is frightening for our community. I really broke it out under demand and supply. Some of the key things here under the single family home sales and pricing. The average sale price for November 2021 for the first time ever exceeded $1 million. And I believe that was in the city and La Plata County both. Under the diminishing supply and absorption, wanted to identify under lightning absorption, in November of 2021, in the Durango area, there were only 6 single family homes listed for sale. To give some perspective on that. Absorption, lightning absorption rate, as well as identifying 48% fewer residential units were available compared to what was for sale in November of 2020. There was also a needs analysis study completed. That was done by the Root Policy organization. And so that was completed in September of 2021. And so I provided quite a bit of data. I also included that needs analysis study as an attachment to the report, but really wanted to identify here a snapshot of what they have identified for short need, which is really the next 3 years. They're identifying 570 new units would be needed to meet the ongoing supply and demand for the rentals, which I've identified here for sort of those lower income brackets, as well as the missing middle brackets, right around that 80 to 120% area median income. An average annual development would be needed of 310 units for workforce housing on an annual basis. (2022), so the market forecast, housing availability will remain a key issue due to the lingering pandemic. The impact of COVID on the housing market really does remain uncertain. Housing supply chain issues, the diminishing supply, fewer residential homes are available for sale. Building cost challenges. I think we're all aware the costs and expenses to build have just dramatically increased. And so that will continue to be a challenge for us as we look to build affordable housing projects. But certainly those partnerships, those collaborations will help us achieve our goals and help us get there and get some units in the ground and make the impact that we're looking to achieve with the council's goals. I think also we're seeing a lot more funding coming from the feds and through the state legislator. And so we're seeing more housing funding becoming available through grant processes. And so we're hoping to take advantage of those to hopefully help us with some of those building cost challenges. Economic impacts, of course, the labor shortages, and then the financial sector adjustments That is just tying to the feds and the increased possibility of those interest rates for mortgage rates. And that would, higher borrowing costs combined with record high home prices will continue to push many home buyers out of the market. This slide really just indicates what the housing plan and our strategic plan has identified for performance indicators that will help us track and really metric our housing progress. And so just wanted to bring highlight to that as I sort of go through the rest of the presentation. These will really be identified with what have we done, what have we accomplished, what are those ongoing efforts with the housing program and the work that we have planned, and what does that look like for the horizon into 2022, really a look ahead. So I wanted to identify here just again some highlighted snippets of data and information that was included in the report. 104 residential units were permitted in 2021. Currently, there are 569 long-term affordable units that exist in Durango. This includes 40 affordable units that were added with the Aspero project in 2021, and 1,230 units. And I wanted to just do a breakdown because, again, some of these projects are still in review or have been approved or might even be under construction. And so they haven't quite pinpointed if they're all going to be rental, if they're all going to be ownership. But when I kind of went through some of those planning materials, approximately 75% of those are identified to be rental units. And out of that 1,230, 25% are identified to be ownership right now. And again, that model could change slightly as those projects go through the development process. But again, just wanted to highlight that there between ownership and rental. We have a couple things going on that we're really excited to share. The adaptive reuse of a hotel and motel, that would be identified in 2021 with the project of the Best Western Hotel conversion for affordable housing. The continued implementing housing plan, which includes the parking code amendments that went through, as well as the multiplex legalization to support infill housing. Also included in the report were some of the fair share outcomes that Homes Fund provided for us. Lisa Bloomquist, the executive director for Homes Fund, is actually on, I think, the Zoom tonight too. So in case council has any additional questions, she'll be here to help answer any of those. But the City and Homes Fund collaborate on the administration and operation of the city's fair share program, which includes mortgage assistance. Some of the outcomes that I wanted to highlight here, the total fair share loans deployed thus far totals $1,215,968. And that includes a portion of that for the mortgage assistance, as well as the contribution that the city gave towards the Animas View mobile home park co-op to purchase that for those residents. 5 deed restricted units in the Mountain Trace development have been completed, and those do have a deed restriction on them of some kind. And then 4 more are planned in the pipeline for that particular development. And then $9.79 million in homes have been purchased using the funds from the fair share fee in lieu funds. Again, another performance indicator where we've made strides is under the land banking program for the Urban Renewal Authority. That they did do an initiation of assessment of development potential on city-owned properties. Some outcomes for that include the Midtown area, and then in the pipeline right now is the North Main Gateway area as well. So making some strides there, and some of those potential developments would include some workforce housing potentially. Again, could be ownership, could be rental. It's on a case-by-case basis and negotiations with developers. In 2021, some key initiatives, these are really tying back to the council's strategic goals in the strategic plan, and just wanted to highlight some of those and maybe provide some clarity on some too. One here is the revise and adopt the new fair share ordinance. It was our goal to revise the Fair Share program in 2021. We issued an RFP for assistance from a housing consultant twice with no results, with no replies, I'm sorry. So instead of jumping into revisions of the program, we have pivoted and are now establishing ways to more effectively use Fair Share funds to get these units built. In partnership with Homes Fund, we are developing a system of deed restrictions that can be integrated into new housing developments. Using Fair Share funds, the city can help offset infrastructure costs and/or fees to become a partner in the project, and in return for financial contribution, can get deed restricted units built. These efforts will inform how we update the Fair Share program in the future. So just wanted to kind of update and clarify that. We've also advanced housing related code amendments, and we'll continue to look at code and try and simplify processes for housing development. But some I identified here were the parking and the multiplex legalization. Assessing potential for development of workforce housing on city-owned properties. You know, we certainly have a list of inventory of the parcels that the city owns, but we will want to come back to council at some point and really identify some of those, get council's feedback and prioritization, and really have a dialogue about what could be built on some of those to really help determine where we're headed with some of those city-owned parcels. Establish policies to use housing funds to help facilitate unit construction. And then into 2022, a look ahead. I've been hired, so again, wanted to reiterate that. I started in December and have really absorbed and learned what Durango has done and really what the work plan has in the horizon for us as we head into this new year. And as Scott mentioned, hope. You know, we're excited. We've got things moving and shaking, and we've got some forward movement, but we also want to have tangible things to show the community what we're doing in housing. So the strategic plan, the work will continue. We'll continue to track that and monitor that and provide feedback to council on a more regular basis. Continued participation in the regional housing alliance initiatives. Again, that partnership, those collaborations with the other communities in our region. Expand partnership with Homes Fund, as I mentioned, to develop deed restricted qualifications and deed monitoring program as we head into the new year and try and start to have more affordable housing units in place. 2022 Housing Incentive Program, council did budget $500,000 to contribute towards infrastructure to bring down the cost of construction and new developments. And so we are certainly in negotiations with a couple different developers on some potential housing projects. Establish a relevant and dynamic housing dashboard. You know, this is something I kind of realized as well when I started. I thought, where's all the information? I want it at my fingertips and I want to find it. And so really a goal of ours is to have a, main source, resourceful community dashboard on our city housing website to really help track and show our community what we are doing and what strides we've made with affordable housing. Advanced housing related code amendments. Again, we're starting to look at the ADU program, zoning and density in 2022. Support the urban renewal authorities' efforts as they continue to do work and make strides towards incentivizing workforce housing. And tracking state and federal funding, as I mentioned, lots of funding coming down the pipelines through the state, through the federal government. And we want to get our hands on some of that money to do some projects. So really exciting there. We're seeing more money than we've ever seen before for affordable housing. So ready to make some projects happen. And I really just wanted to give time to talk with you, council, to really get your feedback, making sure that, since the Housing Innovation Division is new, I'm also a new staff person here, but really wanted to get and confirm council's, housing priorities, expectations, and direction for moving forward with the housing program. And so with that, I can probably stop sharing my screen if you'd like.
Councilors, do you have any questions or comments for Eva or Scott?
Can I start?
You, yes. So it's great now, just so you guys know, I figured out how to see your hand raises without having to see it on your screen. So this is great.
Perfect. I'll jump in and start. Thank you. Eva, welcome. It's so exciting to have you on board and the potential of what this position could do for our city. So it's great. I know you said that with the fair share ordinance, I know we didn't get any bids on the RFP that went out, and you said you pivoted to change that to like using the funds, but are you still revising the fair share ordinance?
Can jump in there and Eva back me up. We plan to take the lessons that we learned by taking the in lieu fees and trying to invest them back into projects for deed restricted units. We're going to use that to inform our updates, but we still have the RFP. We can put that back out, but it feels like we need to know a little bit more clearly what we want to accomplish with the fair share updates, and working with these projects and figuring out the financials of how they work is giving us a better sense of how we can update it in a way that results in more units, because that's really the underlying problem with fair share right now is, people are paying the fee and the units haven't been built. So we really want to figure out how can we update it in a way that gets to the outcomes that we want. So I would say it's on pause while we negotiate and work on these specific projects, and then we'll bring it back up probably mid-year into this year at some point to see if we want to go back out to bid and pick that back up.
Okay, I just look at that as such like a missed opportunity with some of these developments coming up, and I don't know how the rest of council feels, but I would support. I don't know what the answer is since no one responded to it, but I think that it is something that if we could get other people's input on and what other cities are doing that are successful there, I think it would be super important. But thank you for the update. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited for what you guys have in store. So thanks.
Councilor Bosman.
Yes, thank you. Welcome, Eva, on the team here, and thank you, Scott, for those very encouraging words in your opening statement there. I think we need to all keep that in mind. I think when I hear back from builders and designers and property owners, one of the biggest concerns is always the complexity of everything and the amount of fees and charges and the permitting process. So I think when we speak about the fair share ordinance, I hope that will be a lot more simpler version in the future than it is now. But what I really wanted to ask on this presentation, which I appreciate, is that focusing on actual housing that are added. So is there a way that we can see what our or the city's efforts have been and brought in actual added housing over the last 5 or 10 years? So on this document, it's 150 pages or so, and a lot of it is related to studies on housing needs, income levels, partnerships, programs, fee structures. But when I look at the list of completed larger projects, I think it's on page 13, there's about 10 or 15 larger projects that have been completed over the last 10 years. Is there a way to look back and see what have we actually done to make some of these projects work or get more affordable units on the ground, or get more units on a certain lot size with higher density, like the one you have been negotiating on or discussing about at 32nd Street? Because I think it would help explain a little bit better to our residents what we've done in history. Did we get actual results on the supply side? That's what we're all working for. And can that historical information help us make better decisions in the future? I think that's where we end up going on this. And obviously there's more aspects that I didn't bring up, like the mortgage assistance and deed restricted housing, but this is more focused on actual adding houses and how successful that has been in history. So maybe it's probably more for you, Scott, than Eva. Is there any looping back on that?
I'd say I would take that as, a good comment and a good guide for helping us flesh out kind of how the dashboard is designed and how it presents that information. We have the base numbers of how many affordable units are in Durango. A lot of those, I would say every one of those had some public element to them. So we either, supported them, directly financially, or supported them through state tax credits, or gave them land or something. So we can flesh that out about how, if I'm understanding you right, how city efforts have, ultimately resulted in both market rate and affordable housing. So it's a good comment. We'll factor that in as we move forward.
Yeah, thank you for considering that. Appreciate it.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Eva. As we think about council going into the strategic planning session at the end of this month, I'm pleased with the things we've done to support attainable housing. I'm thinking that there's probably more we can do that we haven't imagined. And so I just want to say that I would welcome Scott's, the community development, the city managers, suggestions for other things that we should be thinking about challenging ourselves, because there's not a city in the country where the free market is addressing attainable housing. Otherwise, everyone would be moving there. So we have to provide the incentives to help work with developers to address this. And I would welcome more suggestions for thinking, and not only the partnerships, not only with developers, but it's also a partnership with staff. So thank you.
Councilor Youssef.
Yes, on that same note that Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy was suggesting, other options just to consider as we move forward. First of all, great presentation, Eva, and nice discussion. Scott, thank you both for your efforts. And thank you to Jose for making housing a priority and adding staff. This is such a great move in the right direction. So other options just for consideration, just to add to the notes, is potential looking into density bonuses, fee waivers, and identification of land to subsidize land development and help create below market opportunities. A couple of other things that I was thinking of that I would love to do with council at some point in 2022, perhaps as we're looking at our strategic plan. First of all is updating and revising our 1,000 affordable units by 2040. I think that we can update that number here soon. I think that obviously needs to be adjusted as we're almost there already. And then I do think it's going to be worthwhile to have a conversation about how we can look at long-term sustainable sources of funding for housing. A lot of communities had ballot initiatives on their ballots last year around affordable and community housing projects. Several did. I know Avon, Basalt, Lafayette, Leadville, Ouray, Vale, Crested Butte, and Telluride all passed initiatives. I would at least like to place that on our discussion at some point for council consideration, potentially a reauthorization of the 2005 half-cent sales tax. That has been discussed at length in the past. So revisiting some of those at some point would be appropriate. Thank you.
I'm just excited about the whole housing initiative and innovation. I love the word innovation. I think that's awesome because it's going to take that to make this successful. And I think that we have a lot of the things in place now that when we move forward, we're going to be able to work on it, with the RHA, the City Housing Division, the URA, all these things that I think synergistically are going to work together and give us the capability to impact the housing affordability for our middle income and workforce housing also. We're doing a fairly good job with affordable. There's units being built. We need to get that missing middle, that slot that we don't quite have filled so that our firefighters and our teachers and our police department and our maintenance workers can all still live in the community that they've called home for a long time, or even just recently. So thank you very much. It was a great presentation. Appreciate it. So Melissa, do you have another question or? Okay, good. Mr. Madrigal, did you have any final comments or should I move on to 6.1.2?
Just one comment of just thank you, council, for the support. It's definitely a team effort working with staff and the council, being able to work together and being unified with our goals and placing funding behind it with the Housing Innovation Division. So thank you very much for your support, and we really appreciate y'all.
You're welcome. So 6.1.2, fourth quarter strategic plan and financial report.
Excellent. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Devin Schmidt. I am the Budget and Strategic Plan Officer for the City of Durango. Bear with me one moment, please, while I share my screen and pull up the fourth quarter strategic plan report. Excellent. Are you all seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, so for starters, we're gonna discuss the fourth quarter strategic plan. I will discuss the items that are status pending, caution, needs focus, or have been completed, and I will pause after each section of the plan to address any questions from council. So starting off high level, financial excellence and transparency is on track. Affordability and economic opportunity is on track. Enhanced livability and sense of place is on track. Ensure effective infrastructure network is on track. And diversity, equity, and inclusion on track, as well as environmental and social sustainability. So now we're going to take a little bit deeper dive into what that means under each objective. So starting off under financial excellence and transparency, under sustainability, we have an item that has been completed, which is develop a fund balance policy reserve. Scrolling down then into the other section of financial excellence and transparency, which is set standards for sound, effective trades governance. We have completed the 365 training of Microsoft Teams. So with 64% of city staff have taken at least one Microsoft training class. Reassess and revamp employee safety programs. That was completed as well with new programs rolled out for safety concerns and reporting. We have an Orange Cone Award, which is refocused with a burrito party for accident reduction in January 2022. Increased CERSA training and the participation rate there. So we met that goal with many departments at 100%. Launch a property safety awareness campaign. And so for the citywide month of August, staff did do that. And then finally, grow employee participation in the professional development program. So in Q4, we were up almost 200% with 8 conferences, 6 trainings, and 1 master program compared to 2020. So I'll take a second there and pause and see if there's any questions from council under financial excellence and transparency. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to keep moving. Under affordability and economic opportunity, we have several items on track. We do have one item that's listed as status pending, and that's the participation and evaluation of affordable and attainable housing, housing, social services, and shelter sales tax ballot for November of 2022. And so funding alternative analysis is underway. No action underway towards 2022 sales tax initiative. So that one is listed as status pending. Under expand economic development opportunities with regional stakeholders, assist the URA and implement URA projects, adopt the Midtown plan, and execute a city tax incremental financing agreement are all listed as complete. Status pending is the work closely with 9R and private developer to redevelop the 9R admin property, and that's obviously pending the discussions with 9R, DFPD, and the city. Engage the Library Small Business Development Center of Chamber of Commerce and other partners to provide business classes and seminars for the community. In 2022, staff in the Economic Opportunity Division will be focusing on creating a one-stop shop for businesses to get necessary information. So that item is listed as status pending. And then finally, our last section listed under affordability and economic opportunity, we have rate of unemployment. So we have that listed as status pending, as Durango is at 4.2%. In the US, it's 3.9%. Expand employment opportunities in the city. This is also listed as status pending. So again, staff from the Economic Opportunity Division are working in partnership on a variety of initiatives to accomplish that goal. And then finally, analyze a homeless strategy as part of any proposed regional housing authority, and that's listed as complete, as that's not a RHA focus. Any questions on this area before I move on? Okay, seeing none. Enhance livability and sense of place. Under safety for police, fire, and emergency services, we have several completed items under here. So we have the cooperation with Access Mental Health to have one co-response team fielded by first quarter and the second team by second quarter. So overall, the core team has diverted 294 calls. In addition, they've conducted 270 follow-up calls. Durango Police Department leadership has collaborated with MANA and the Homeless Coordinating Council to develop SMART goals, and they're seeking to create resources for homeless while working with code enforcement to educate and enforcing RV and camping ordinances. Under reduce violent crimes by partnering with community leaders and other law enforcement agencies. The initial year-end data shows that violent crime is down 19% as compared to 2020 numbers. Five high crime areas were identified, and officers have began extra patrols in those locations. By the end of the year, officer initiated calls have increased 45% as compared to 2020. And the initial data suggests that crime at these locations have been reduced as a result of the extra patrols. And as well, under collaborating with the Southwest Auto Theft Task Force and reduce auto theft by 10%, the initial data shows vehicle thefts were decreased by 11% compared to 2020 data. So those are all some really great completions out of our police department on those items. Still under safety, police, and fire emergency services, we do have one item listed as caution, and that is the community engagement team in 2022. So that has had some staffing issues, which has prevented that objective from advancing. Two more completions is the number of community-oriented policing activities held annually, as well as host and participate in minimum monthly engagement events. So those items are listed as complete with the one under caution. Also in this section, we have improved financial viability of amenities, including Durango Public Library, Parks and Recreation, and the work of the Creative Commission economy. We have one item listed as caution here, and that is because the economic impact study is still in progress and is anticipated to be completed January, February of 2022. Under the items for natural and hard surface trails, we have one item listed as cautionary, and then one item that's listed as complete. And so the item that is listed as cautionary is redevelopment Animas Trail from Rank Park to Demon Bridge, and that is still in process. The second part we have that is complete is the Smart 160 engineering coordination with property owners is ongoing, and the maintenance of surface trails is ongoing as well. We do have a contract in place, but construction was delayed to early spring with environmental clearances. And finally, under complete park improvements on neighborhood community parks, we have an item listed as cautious as with the Mason Center being complete. There will be looking into alternative uses for the gymnasium location. Santa Rita will be 95% complete by year end with some landscaping in 2022. And Hillcrest and Pioneer Parks were rescheduled for 2022, and the funds were reappropriated through the budget process due to just the staffing impacts with those two projects. In our last section here is still part of the improve the financial viability. And so we have an item listed as caution and then several listed as complete. The Common Threads project received no bids, so we will try again in 2022 of the spring. The Frolic has been installed. Under the items that are complete, we have the Art Brigade program is complete for 2021. However, that support for the Durango Creative District will continue. All Durango Creative Grant funding has been given out for 2021 as well. And related to the library, so one of the items we had was improve and increase availability of library resources by returning to pre-pandemic COVID levels. And by end of 2021, the library hours were at 90% of those before the pandemic. We do have one item listed as status pending, which is to engage stakeholders on the feasibility of performing arts in the convention center. And that, any questions related to enhanced livability and sense of place from council? Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna keep cruising here. Ensure effective infrastructure network. We have a few items listed as caution. So that is the design, the Midtown Safety and Accessibility Project. So design is underway, will be completed in 2022. The design was delayed due to budget negotiations and a special appropriation that was approved for council in May. So that one is a little bit delayed. 32nd Street design is at 60%. Design Camino Crossing project. The public process is underway. The city continues right-of-way clearance from Town Plaza to complete the survey design. And for the 550 Transit ADA improvements, phase 1, the project is in CDOT's IGA process and expected design and constructed by the end of 2022. We do have the design of 30th Street Connect complete. The city's portion of the project is complete. However, CDOT will finalize construction in the spring or summer of 2022. We have increased the number of transit passes sold. So transit pass sales reached 15,667, which is above the target of 1,200. In addition, a fare app was launched in the spring of 2021. And 2,869 single rides per day week passes were sold on the app. Durango was also awarded the gold level bike friendly designation. And for the walkability assessment, data collection for the walkability assessment was completed as well. Under mobility, accessibility, transit, and transportation systems, we have the reduce the 2019 streets tax to the general fund complete. For 2022, it was reduced by that 33%. We have these capital improvement projects. Those were completed, and we have 90% all CIP projects by the end of November. And then finally, the rest of the items listed there are on track. For the stormwater, under sanitation, water, sewer, stormwater, solid waste, and recycling. For stormwater, adopt the stormwater management plan. The phase 3 scope has been going back and forth with the consultant. Expect to sign a change order for phase 3 in early November, and they will start the work. For 32nd Street extended detention basin, an extension for the DOLA grant was applied for in October, and it has been extended through December of 2022. For the waste and recycling service, that is listed as complete. The privatization study was completed in 2021 and presented to council. The complete recyclables materials RFP is listed as complete, and the complete trash and recycle rate study is also listed as complete. Moving on to aviation, we have one item listed as caution, which is the wastewater treatment facility upgrades. The pre-design parameters approved by CDPHE, treatment technology pre-selection for the RFP is in development. Engineering and design have been delayed until the selection of a preferred treatment technology can occur. And design is anticipated to occur through Q3 in 2022, with the construction bidding coming thereafter. And we have to facilitate the FAA required triennial full-scale exercise of the airport emergency plan, which was completed in April of 2021. And finally, we have the complete facilities assessment, which is listed as needs focus and will continue into 2022. Staff will be meeting next week to discuss action steps forward for this particular item on the plan. Any questions on ensure effective infrastructure? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to diversity, equity, inclusion. We have completed the proclamations. Also completed is the utilizing the translation services. We have listed a status pending for the external communication plans with the intent to distribute trained staff for consistent messaging. That status pending with prioritization of other projects. That will move into 2022. Under internal to city organization and workforce, we have the racial equity survey, which was completed, and there was 40% completion in 2021. Under develop targeted engagement, education, and training programs based on the results of the employee racial equity survey, that is listed as caution, and that is a partnership with CPS and HR to develop the roadmap. And will be developed by end of year. And then finally, we have developed the renaming assets, which was complete and brought to council for that. So any questions on the diversity, equity, and inclusion? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to keep moving. Environmental and social sustainability. We have one item that's listed as needs focus, which is implement sustainability action plan in departments which have key performance indicators to reduce their carbon footprint. First quarter 2022 will be finalization of that. We also have complete assessment of municipal fleet vehicles and evaluate vehicles end of life to ensure replacements are needed. Efficient and electric alternatives are considered and purchased when feasible. Implementation is underway, but delayed due to staff resignations and FMLA absences. Under amend the land development code to establish an electric vehicle infrastructure, that's also listed as complete. And we do also have status pending for quantify the number of electric vehicle charging stations installed in utility customers' homes within city limits. So that one will be an item for 2022. Project infrastructure with fire mitigation in the Durango wildland urban interface. So we have that complete with 6 miles or 36 acres completed. For the community forestry plan, that's listed as caution with 5% of existing tree inventory pruned, 198 trees planted. Partnership with CDOT and La Plata County to complete the Grandview Access Control Plan, that's listed as cautions, and retirements and reorgs load CDOT and city's response to getting information to the consultant, leading to the project being a couple months behind. The project is 70% complete, and CDOT hopes it will be completed by the end of 2021, but likely to continue into 2022. And finally, the diversion rate of recycle is listed as status pending. And under social sustainability, we have several items listed and complete, and that is improve the city brand, improve performance metrics around public records, increase website hits on agenda pages. So for 2021 meetings, those increased by 15% compared to 2022. There are also completed is to conduct a training seminar for serving liquor safely for code compliance. So that's provided to all on-site premises with the renewal, and so that one is completed but is also ongoing. Any questions about environmental social sustainability before I move on to the quarter financial report? Okay.
Thank you, Devin, for that presentation. That's wonderful.
I just wanted to say thank you, and I think it's great this is all available on the website. Yes. What a huge accomplishment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and Council, if I may, Devin, just one quick just update to let you know this is the fourth quarter financial report. However, I think probably what would be more, or what is more anticipated will be when we actually have the end of year where we can actually do actuals to budgeted. And we are still in the process of closing those out. So that presentation is coming to council. We have revenues for sure February 15th. And if we can get everything closed out and ready to go, we'll have expenditures that day. If we can't, we'll move expenditures to March, but we will have those more in-depth detailed discussions. I just wanted to make sure I put that note out there for the council that when you're looking for the actuals to budgeted conversation, that's upcoming. This is just the quarterly financial report just to stay in tune with the council and the public on our finances.
Thank you, Jose. So yes, this is the quarter four preliminary report. All of these numbers are unaudited financials. So they are a bit preliminary in nature, as Jose stated. I'll start off with the general fund, and I'm going to scroll down here a little bit so you can see the chart with the data. So starting with the general fund, this fund has a positive performance indicator listed as the actual revenues exceeded the amended budget by 5% or $2.1 million. This is due to the conservative budget estimates on sales tax. Charges and services did lag through 2021 with the recreation center still slowly rebounding and feeling those real ebbs and flows of the pandemic continuing. Through December of 2021, the preliminary expenditures are at 92% of the amended 2021 amended budget, which also results in a positive performance indicator. And the preliminary revenues exceeded preliminary expenditures by $3.6 million at the end of December. So if we take a little bit deeper dive, down into the general fund expenses by function. You can see here that there are several areas that are listed as a positive performance indicator. I'm only going to talk about the two that need focus, which is information technology. That item is listed at $7,000 over the amended budget. This will come to council on February 18th for an amendment, as that was listed in the salaries and benefits area. Under non-departmental miscellaneous, that'll also require an amendment as expenditures exceeded the amended budget, and that was due to unemployment, principal payments, property casualty insurance, and historically, council may recall that non-departmental has had a level of contingency to offset these items. However, in 2021, with the unknowns around COVID, that contingency was pulled. So those two items will come to council to create a budget amendment, as council does approve the budget at a department level. So wanted to make sure that council is aware of that. The general fund balance is healthy at $18.5 million. And moving on into any capital projects. So any capital projects that were not completed at the end of 2021 were reappropriated in the 2022 budget process. And those projects include the 32nd Street sewer treatment pond, the Grandview access control, and County Road 250, 251 was moved to the 2019 sales tax fund. So I'm going to pause for a second and see if there's any questions on the general fund before I move forward. Okay. Seeing none. I'm going to move into the enterprise funds, and we are going to start off with water. And I'm also going to bring us down here to the chart so we can all look at that information. So the water operating fund is listed as positive with the actual revenues at 95% of the amended budget. The variance is about 531,000 budgeted behind of revenues. The preliminary expense analysis is we would expect to obviously spend 100% of the budget. So operating is only at 33%. However, that will increase with the transfer to capital projects. Actual expenditures, including capital projects, is really closer to 52%. And the performance indicator is positive as the fund is on track. Currently, revenues exceed expenditures looking at the combined funds by 1.8 million. And as an additional note, the city of Durango is working on the fund balance for water and the rates accordingly. I'm going to scroll down here to the capital fund. Water construction fund, there was approximately 2.1 million completed in capital projects in the water construction fund. This is the listing of capital projects, and any items that were not completed at the end of 2021 will be reappropriated, and that includes the water line replacements, the meter replacements, the admin building, water system telemetry, the sludge management, the 3MG tank, the South Durango control vault improvements, concrete sidewalks and aprons, as well as the water dock upgrades. Additionally, the water fund, as discussed, does have a very healthy fund balance at 17.7 million preliminary for the end of 2021. Any questions on water before I move to sewer?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. First of all, Devin, thank you. I just wanted to say
hands so that I can.
Oh, sorry.
Hands, thank you. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy, and then Olivier, I think you wanted to raise your hand too, yes?
Yes.
So, Devin, thank you for this. I just think it's important. You mentioned it, but I really wanted to highlight that we had a study session today on the water fund, the balance, the revenue versus operating expenses, and that a reduction in rates or some kind of revenues collected, however that's going to be achieved, will go back to the Infrastructure Advisory Board for another review. And I just want the community to know that we hear your concerns and we are looking at addressing this in a timely manner, but also in an appropriate manner. And I think it was a healthy discussion today, and I look forward to the next meeting with the IAB. Thank you.
Councilor Bosman.
Thank you. And also thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy, for sharing that to our community. I think it's an important part. I had a little question for you on the water fund. It shows 2 million in projects, and I'm just wondering, is it worthwhile? These projects a lot of them are maintenance. They're not so much capital improvements meaning for a new project or expansion or a new part of the water treatment system. So I'm just wondering, is it worthwhile to have that as maintenance? Because it is pretty much an operational expense, a lot of these, versus capital projects.
So the designation based on the capital projects policy is that a project has to be over $50,000 and then has to be considered an asset. So if the project is over $50,000, it does end up in that construction fund for capital projects. So that's really kind of the key difference there with why some of those projects that seem maintenance in nature would be listed in the construction fund.
Yeah, I think this goes back to having these, the water fund is only one enterprise fund, yeah? And there was discussion to have the capital project separated out of it, to have better understanding of what the operational cost is of that department or fund activity. So the approach that was taken, I guess, is to have two separate funds that then later are combined into the joint water fund. But I think if the capital projects that are actually more maintenance related go into that same capital projects fund, water capital project funds, then maybe the intention of separating that as a line item is not really achieved. I'm not sure how other council thinks of that, but that was a little bit my observation on this.
That's understand the question, Councilor Bosmans, and this was done at the direction of the council. They had asked to have it separated between operating and capital. So obviously, if there's any part that the council would like to reconsider or change, that's at the will of the council. We're trying to make sure that we present the information in a way that the council finds informative for them to make best decisions.
No, and I'm not complaining about it. This is exactly what you did the last times. I'm just realizing that we're not getting what we intended, and maybe that's something for future discussion on the council, I guess. Thank you.
Councilor Noseworthy.
Yeah, on that point, I do want to say that what I have seen is the separation and then ultimately the cumulative total, which there you have it. You've just, thank you, Devin, you pulled it up. So we do have the ultimate combined accounting for one enterprise fund, but this provides the clarity of how are we doing on an operational point of view, how are we doing on a separate CIPs. And I will also say, Councilor Bosmans, in previous councils, we have had that discussion of, is it a new project? Is it maintenance? Where does that fit? And that was pretty well discussed in the capital improvement project policy that was reviewed also by the Strategy and Long-Term Finance Committee as well as the previous council. But, you know, we can always revisit that again. But Devin, thank you, and thank you for showing that ultimately we have the one combined fund. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I can move on to the sewer fund. So starting off with the sewer operating fund. Sewer operating fund is the revenues are at a 96%, so about 313,000 less than the amended budget. The performance indicator is still listed as positive for the sewer fund. For actual expenditures, 60% compared to actual expenditures. If we include the capital projects, it's 72%. The performance indicator is still listed as positive as the revenues exceed expenditures for the sewer fund. So I'm going to scroll down through here and show you for capital projects completed in the sewer fund, it's 1.3 million. Again, any projects that weren't completed for 2021 are reappropriated, and that includes the Santa Rita Park design, the sewer project, the lift station replacement, and the Santa Rita admin building. The sewer fund does have a healthy fund balance at the 5.3 million. And with that, I'll pause for a second to see if there's any questions from council related to sewer. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to the airport fund. So for the airport operating fund, the revenues actually exceeded the amended budget by 2% or 142,000. The performance indicator is listed as positive as the preliminary expense analysis for expected operating expenditures is at 67%. If you include the capital projects, it's closer to 87%. But with the revenues exceeding the expenditures and the expenditures being within budget, this is also listed as a positive performance indicator. Scrolling down into airport capital, the airport did complete $643,000 worth of capital projects. And the couple of projects that will be reappropriated or were reappropriated, excuse me, in the 2022 budget include the terminal door replacement, as well as the snow removal equipment. The airport combined fund does have a combined fund balance of $12 million for airport, and so that's all positive. And the airport had a huge year for their traffic, so those are all positive for the airport. Any questions before I move on to the trash and recycle fund?
I raised my hand. I don't know if you saw me.
Has her hand up, yes.
Devin, I just think it's really important for the public to recognize that even though we have a $12 million reserve fund, we have significant capital improvement projects coming down the pike, so to speak. So, and maybe even just to remind everyone that the airport will be closed in September to accommodate some of these capital improvement projects. So just wanted to make certain people were clear on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that point of clarification. I believe around $6 million of that fund balance will be utilized to support and offset some of those federal grant projects for the airport in 2022. Okay, so moving on to trash and recycle. For the trash and recycle fund, the actual revenues collected were at 110%, so 311%, or 311,000, excuse me, of the over the amended budget for revenue collections. This is listed as a positive performance indicator for revenues. For the preliminary expense analysis, expenditures are at 90%, and so that's also listed as positive, and the fund revenue is exceeding expenditures by $587,000. The trash and recycle fund also does have a healthy fund balance of $2.5 million. Any questions on trash and recycle? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to transportation services. For the transportation services fund, the expected revenue would be 100%. Actual revenue collected is at 91%. So it's about $343,000 behind the amended budget. This is still listed as a positive performance indicator. As council and the public can see, the amended budget was projected to dip into fund balance, if you will, by $560,000, where in reality, we are just behind about $70,000 revenues to expenditures. For the fund balances in transportation services, it is at $2.4 million. The transit fund did receive CARES funding and CRISA funds, as well as an increase in lodgers tax. And primarily for the 2022 budget, the transportation fund is funded fully by those two particular federal grant revenues. Any question on transit before I move on? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to move on into the special revenue fund. So starting off with the 2005 quarter cent debt service, or the capital improvements fund, the expected revenue was at 100%. However, we are 23% ahead of that, or $2 million in collections, which resulted in $484,000 above the amended budget. This fund is used as to pay for the debt service out of Florida Road and the library. And the fund is listed at a positive performance indicator. For the fund balance in this fund, we are sitting at $346,000. Any questions on that before I move on to the other quarter cent? Okay, seeing none. For the 2005 quarter cent for parks, open space, and trails, the expected revenue collected again mirrors the other quarter cent of this, where we're 23% ahead. We have the $484,000 in where revenue is exceeding the amended budget. The performance indicator is listed as positive. We also completed $3.3 million in capital projects in the Parks and Open Space and Trails Fund. Any projects that weren't completed were reappropriated, and that includes the Smart 160, open space acquisition, park trail and rec improvements, Trails 2000, and post maintenance. This fund also does have a healthy fund balance at $3.1 million. And I'll pause for a second there. Any questions before I hit the 2015? Okay, so for the 2015, again, this fund is at, this one does operate a little bit differently because we do receive intergovernmental or grant revenues in this fund. So the actual revenues collected are at 84%. This $2 million that was listed in the amended budget was carried forward into 2022 to offset the ADA improvements and for reappropriation to cover that project. So the sales tax, however, is at that 24% ahead, just as the other quarter cent taxes are as well. The 2015 did complete $5.5 million in capital projects. The items that are moving forward is the ADA improvements, as I discussed, which have that grant revenue tied to it, the Santa Rita Park, the Downtown Access Camino del Rio, the traffic study design for 14th, 15th, 16th, US Highway 550 and 3rd, the park maintenance shop, recreation center improvements, 8th and College, 32nd Street grade crossing, and the community forestry plan, and finally the Rotary Park restrooms. This fund also does have a healthy fund balance at $6 million preliminarily at the end of 2021. And seeing no questions, I'll keep cruising into the 2019 sales tax. This fund is used for street improvements. Again, it's 24% ahead or $1 million over the amended budget. This fund did complete $2.8 million in capital projects. And is listed as a positive performance indicator. There are a few projects that were carried forward. One item that I did mention was the County Road 250, 251 will be in the 2022 budget out of this fund. North College, street overlays, ADA ramps, seal coating, and the 50/50 sidewalk project. And for preliminary numbers for the fund balance, we're sitting at $2.2 million in the 2019 sales tax. Oh, yes.
We have a question from Councilor Noseworthy.
Kevin, thank you. Thank you for this information. And with the healthy fund balances in like the 2005 open space sales tax and the 2015, I'm aware of other projects that we're going to be looking at and needing to finance for them. But when I see this fund balance, and this is mainly a comment for the city manager, I'm hopeful that you'll be coming back to us, or at least considering coming back to us with some other projects that can be funded yet this year by this fund balance. This is a case where I would really hope that we see the money being put to use in real time to address our streets and alleys. And I recognize that there's staffing shortages, there's supply chain issues, but I just wanted to pull out that this is one where I think taking care of this and spending it now wisely is better than saving for some kind of rainy day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, for the Lodgers Tax Fund, currently collections are $1.4 million over the amended budget revenues, and that's due to the increase in percentage of collections. This is rebounding well. For expenses, the charges and services are equal to the 2021 amended budget. So those contracts that are paid out of this are listed correctly at that as well. So any questions on lodgers before I move on to the internal service funds? Okay. seeing none, quickly we'll roll through these. So for the General Services Fund, this one is listed at needs focus. In 2022, we did increase the transfers to correct the deficit. However, an adjustment will need to be made in 2021 to correct the negative fund balance that we're seeing preliminarily. And that'll be brought to council on February 18th. For the SURF Fund, this is the positive, it's listed as positive for 2022. Again, we do have a high fund balance here. And the 2022 budget does include 2 new funds, which is the Technology Replacement Fund and the Building Maintenance Fund, in an effort to draw down that fund balance. We continue to have issues with national shortages and just a real inability to secure some vehicles. So that has continued to be a challenge in replacing some of those vehicles.
Councillor Bosman's had his hand up.
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Devin. I was just wondering, since this budget is going to be split up in 3, and this SURF fund was built up by contributions from other funds for specific equipment replacement, I believe. Is that correct? So some of these other funds are proprietary and have restrictions on the use of it. So I'm just wondering, how will this fund be split up to make sure that the actual use from the enterprise funds, for example, stays in that definition of use? Man, that was a bit confusing, but do you understand what I'm trying to ask, or do you want me to reword it?
I believe I can take a stab at it. I believe I understand the question. So in 2022, a portion of this fund balance was isolated into a technology fund as well as a building maintenance fund. And so those was the start of the replacement for both of those funds. When the funds come into one of these internal service funds, it is by way of a actual debit, if you will, to the other funds. And so analysis could be done to reflect what an enterprise fund has paid versus what the general fund has paid to trace back some of those dollars. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, so because let's say the trash and recycling fund has donated or transferred $1 million into this fund, if that money should be spent within that purpose of the trash and recycling. So if that is associated with the vehicle, then at a certain point you lose the connection, yeah, because you take the money and you split it up for building and IT or technology, and then you lose the link on the source of the money, as well as the restrictions that money initially had being part of that enterprise fund.
So if I could take a shot at this, Devin, Cynthia was the one, and unfortunately she had a family emergency that she had to leave town. So if she was here, we could call her in, and she's the one who actually did the accounting for removing the fund balances into the 2 different funds. There would still be using their linkage. So if it came from the enterprise fund, while they may have contributed a little bit more than their vehicles, their enterprise fund's still going to have computer replacements. So that funding has been transferred over to their computer replacements. The same thing with trash and recycling. They'll have computer replacements as well. Each one of those also has building maintenance requirements. So they're being used from those funds. They're just going to be used in a different manner. And when Cynthia returns, we can definitely have her, if that's a question, talk about how she allocated those funding streams back out.
That would be good. To me, it would be interesting to see at a certain point, because I think, for example, the trash and recycling, if there's 5 million accumulated for vehicle replacement, then that is a significant amount for future expenses and capital expenses. Appreciate that clarification.
Devin, I can't see you anymore. Are you back with us?
Yes. Are you able to see and hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And are you seeing my screen again? I apologize.
Yes, we are, but Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy has her hand up also.
So I just want to say what I'm hearing the city manager say, and it makes sense to me, is that you can follow the money, right? The money's in, money's out, and it will be allocated within the water fund for water computers, for water maintenance that needs to take place on buildings, for water equipment that needs to take place. So yes, I'm sure you can take us through it, but if we can follow the money, I'm pretty comfortable with that as someone who likes to follow the money.
All right, I think we can go on then. Thank you, Devin.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So moving on then, we just have two more funds to cover here. So that is the, apologize, a little bit of technical difficulty. So the risk management fund, this is listed as positive. All of the compensation claims, liability claims come out of this fund, and it's performing as expected. For self-insurance fund, this is also listed as positive, and there should be a sufficient fund balance from 2020 to cover the revenue less expenditures. However, with the preliminary numbers, if we do need to return to council for an appropriation, we certainly can. Again, with some of this being preliminary, there may be a future ask on that fund as well. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if there's any additional questions I can answer for council, but that concludes our Q4 report.
Well, Devin, the one comment I would make about the self-insurance fund is I think it's designed to pay for itself. So if indeed we're going into the negative every year, we might need to reevaluate how that program is working.
Absolutely.
Any other general questions for Devin on these two presentations? All right. Well, thank you very much. Unless, Jose, did you want to have a wrap up you wanted to give on that?
No, just appreciate it. Quarterly financial report, and then we'll be back again in February and March with the budgeted to end of year.
Excellent, thank you. So now we're on to 6.1.3, Downtown's Next Step Update.
Good evening, City Council. Good evening, Mayor. I'm Savannah Lytle with Community Development. I know it's been a long afternoon, now evening, so I will go about this quickly. Just a moment while I share my screen.
And yes, we can see it.
You can see it. Okay. 1 second. So really quickly, this is Downtown's Next Step presentation. I will quickly go over the project overview and what it is, and then our community questionnaire results and highlights from that, our next steps, and then any questions and answers. Quick project overview. The pandemic, for all of us, gave us a moment to pause. We were physically forced to be quiet for a moment in 2020, and that gave us the opportunity personally, professionally, and as a community to really assess what was working for us and what wasn't working for us and where we wanted to go in the future and how we could get there. And one of the biggest examples for us as a community was downtown Main Avenue. We were quickly put together the bump out project. This was in response to the pandemic and getting people outside. And now we're coming to the point where we can assess, is this working? Is this something we want to continue? Is there something better for this? Is there a greater vision for downtown Main Avenue? And how are we going to get there if there is? So that's how this project came into being, and we have called this Downtown Next Step. The project overview is from East 5th Street to East 14th Street along Main Avenue from building face to building face. It really is the streetscape. We do understand that Main Avenue very much does not act in a vacuum, and it is influenced by the surrounding areas. So as mentioned, this is Downtown's Next Step. This is our first project, Main Avenue, but we will be looking at other areas in the downtown area, Camino and Narrow Gauge and East 2nd in the future, and coming up with plans for those as well and how they influence and interact with Main Avenue. The project scope was phase 1 in December, and that was our kickoff. And we had data coordination, we had a public engagement plan we put together with the firm that we hired, MIG. They are a nationwide firm, but they do have an office here in Durango, so that was nice to have the local context with the consultants. They are a planning and design firm. So they put together the public engagement plan. At that point, we did the community questionnaire, which I'll go into detail later. And now we're really in the analysis and visioning phase of this and taking our background documents and what we learned from the community questionnaire and putting that into a vision and objective. And from that will inform 3 conceptual designs that we will put together. And there will be ongoing coordination and engagement with the community. We'll have 2 community engagement events over the next 2 months. Most likely those will be virtual, but we are continuing to engage the community throughout this process. Project schedule, as mentioned in December, we kicked off the project, and now we are in the analysis and visioning phase. We are right here in January, bringing this forward to you with City Council, and then our next step from what we've learned and background of downtown Main Avenue and existing conditions will move into the conceptual design and design alternatives for the next phase. These are just some examples of what we're going to, some of the sample deliverables from this project. There will be CAD drawings as well as 3D renderings. These are just a couple examples of what we're looking at of different alternatives for downtown Main Avenue. I'm sorry, I don't know why my PowerPoint is not quite working, but so we put out a community questionnaire in December, and our goal was to have 300 people 300 responses based on previous surveys the city of Durango has done, as well as other cities similar to our size. We had 930 responses, so we well exceeded what our goal of 300 was. I think that just shows how important downtown Main Avenue is to people, how much they relate to it, and it's a part of their life, and getting almost 1,000 responses for a community questionnaire. It was up for 3 weeks. Demographics, we reached all of our goals except non-English language as a primary language in a household. So we are working to expand that so that we can reach that goal for our non-English language as a primary language in our future community engagement. For our community questionnaire, the results, the primary way that people are getting to downtown is by driving, about 85%. And then along Main Avenue, once you get to Main Avenue, most people are walking, 99%. So that really shows that once they get there, they park, they are moving around by other means, including bicycle is 29%. Most popular reason to visit is 95% are visiting restaurants, bars, and coffee shops. And then shopping was 87%, the next one. So definitely a social event going downtown. And so our vision and values, what is most important for downtown? And the majority, 76%, said supporting and enjoying our local businesses that are down there. And then our next one was 50%, and a comfortable, safe experience for bicycles and pedestrians. We heard that quite a bit about feeling safe as a pedestrian and as a bicyclist. This was interesting. 77% said that what they would like is more outdoor patios. And I think this is very important for some of our conversations coming up as well. Outdoor patios for our restaurants, bars, and coffee shops at 77%. And the next one at 57% was more space for pedestrians and crosswalks, plazas, community gathering spaces, bike safety, bike parking. So these are the elements that people would most like to see considered in the design. That was our questionnaire. That was our first community engagement. And as I mentioned, there'll be 2 other events coming up, most likely virtual. So we'll keep everybody in the loop on those and hope to have high participation as well in those. Next steps is we have the existing conditions assessment, the rough draft, and the best practices memo. So best practices is looking at other cities and what they've done and what has worked and not worked for them. So we're going through those right now and drafting a vision and objectives for Main Avenue. And then, as mentioned, those draft conceptual design alternatives. We have a stakeholder group of local businesses and residents, as well as nonprofits that are all downtown. And we held their first meeting in last week, and we'll have another meeting with them in February. We've strongly included a lot of the city staff, not just community development, but as well as our transportation, parks and recreation. Made sure streets department is in there and involved, as well as parking, obviously. Fire department has been involved in this project, as well as the police department. So we've really tried to include all aspects of city staff in this. We're having a joint board meeting early February, so all of our boards and commissions, Historic Preservation Board, Design Review Board, Planning Commission, and then that community engagement event. So in response to that questionnaire, we had such a high turnout of 930 responses that we really know this is important to a lot of people, and people feel passionately about downtown. So we are making sure to involve everyone. So that is downtown's next step, and I will look forward to bringing another update to you next month.
Thank you very much, Savannah. That was a wonderful presentation. I know a lot of us have had questions from residents about what's happening down there and what are you planning and what are you thinking about. So look forward to the next presentation. Thank you. All righty then, we're going to move on to the review of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is intended to allow the City Council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered under agenda item 9. May we have a reading of the consent agenda, please, Ms. Phillips?
Items 7.1 through 7.3 are approval of minutes. 7.1, the minutes from the November 9th, 2021 City Council Special Study Session. 7.2, the minutes from the January 4th, 2022 City Council Study Session. And 7.3, the minutes from the January 4th, 2022 City Council Regular Meeting. Items 7.4 through 7.8 are discussion and possible action items. 7.4 concerns amendments to the 2022 adopted budget for the purpose of organizational changes and unanticipated budget adjustments. 7.5 concerns Resolution R 2022-2, authorizing appropriation for the Internet Crimes Against Children Grant Program Award that will close by September 30th, 2022. 7.6 concerns Resolution R 2022-3, authorizing an appropriation for the Colorado Department of Law Post-Grant Program Award that will close by June 30th, 2022. 7.7 concerns the submission of a Colorado Department of Local Affairs Peace Officer Mental Health Support and Community Partnership Grant application for fiscal year 2021 through 2022. And 7.8 concerns Resolution R 2022-4, amending Resolution R 2016-40 of the City of Durango for purposes of modifying the fee for marijuana business license and for testing facilities.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any councilors that would like to remove an agenda item? No? Okay, then may I have a motion, please?
Sorry, Mayor Baxter. I was clicking on the microphone. I would like to remove agenda item 7.4.
So that would be the discussion and possible action to make amendments to the 2022 adopted budget for organizational changes and unanticipated budget adjustments?
That's correct.
Any others? Okay, so may we have a motion to approve the consent agenda without 7.4?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? No. May we have a roll call, please, Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy,
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans,
Yes.
Councilor Youssef,
Yes.
Mayor Baxter.
Yes. So then we'll come back to item 7.4, discussion and possible action to make amendments to the 2022 adopted budget for organizational changes and unanticipated budget adjustments. Councilor Bosmans.
Yeah, it's more to get some additional background information, as I was a little bit surprised to see that the city operations department will have all its divisions reassigned to other departments. And I guess, is this department going to be dissolved? And then if I understand correctly, there's a procedure in the charter for dissolving departments. And it's specifically important, I think, because this department has provided such a vital function to our city. And I received quite some feedbacks on all they do. So I'd like to hear some more about the background for these changes and feedback maybe on assurance that the quality of service remains for our streets, for example. So is that something that we can clarify?
I'll be happy to take a shot with it. As we look at the city operations department, we did have our city operations director resign and take a position in the private sector, which allowed us an opportunity to look at city functions and begin to realign them consistently with some options that we may have. Public Works was a department that the city of Durango had for many, many years that had most of the services that are actually kind of coming back together. So it's not something that is completely indifferent. Normally your parks or your public works department would have streets and trash and recycling, which are being moved over into public works, fleet and facilities. As we've been talking about through it, when you see the SURF fund, when we're also looking at our building maintenance and facilities, there was a need where we need some more financial attention to make sure that we're funding our assets and our needs appropriately. So placing that under finance, which is again not uncommon in municipal government, seems to be a very good fit. And then just making the transition, I believe also with Jared coming from utilities over to finance to help on the operations side of facilities and fleet were those changes.
Okay, and is that department going to be dissolved, and what is the process according to the charter?
I will have to defer to Dirk on the process in regards to dissolving a department. I know that there's a process to creating departments, which we have done and will continue to do. Obviously, if there's an amendment that we need to make to an ordinance, we can do so.
Dirk, if I may,
I was going to let Dirk answer that question first.
Okay, I have a question also related to that.
I think that we probably, and I think part of the intent of this process is actually, to have council approve a reorganization. So I think the charter does talk about creation and of departments without specifically talking about dissolution. But my suggestion is that council could be clear that the process here would be laid out to, have council approve this reorganization, if you will, via this document.
Dirk, if I may, just to make sure we're clear, I think it's the reorganization mostly because of the funding sources, not so much as the reorganization of staff. As you know, Councilor Bosman, some of the enterprise funds have their own funding sources associated with them. So making sure that we're not cross-functioning our funds into the general fund was some of the need for the appropriation of the ordinance to ensure that general fund expenditures are paid for by the general fund and enterprise funds are paid through the enterprise funds.
I appreciate the clarification. I want to make sure we follow the charter. So if this meets the requirements from the charter, then it's all fine by me. I thought there was language somewhere that might be a bit more prescriptive on how this is done, and I didn't memorize that section, but maybe it's worthwhile to follow up on, or maybe if it's possible to move this item forward under the condition that it's conform to charter, or however we word it, maybe an easy solution.
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy, you had a thought?
Yes, Dirk, I also have a question about the charter, which is, I believe the charter actually may have required that we have a public works department, which until this city manager, we haven't had, or we may have had, but we didn't have for quite some time. So I think that it's maybe my understanding, and I may be alone here, but it's my understanding that we're actually getting closer to charter requirements with these changes. But you would be more knowledgeable than I on this matter.
Yeah, and I think the semantics of that are such that some of the duties typically referred to as a public works department were handled, by things that arguably were essentially the same thing. I would suggest that we can follow up, double check on whether or not we need any additional approval from council, and we can circle back on that at a future meeting.
So in order to do that, we would need a motion to continue this? Is that the situation? Or
I think this is
that was my question. Are you recommending a continuance, City Attorney?
No, I think that this is, again, as the city manager pointed out, primarily financial, and we can follow up with clarifications if need be. So no, I think that we could go ahead and approve this tonight to clarify the financing aspects.
Okay. So then do we have a motion?
Oh, just so I understand, do we move a motion to move forward with the financial aspect, and we postpone the change of the department, the organizational structure, or do we want to clarify that the closure of a department, if it meets the requirements of the charter first? I'm a bit confused. What is it that we need to move forward?
This is a budget amendment that you're presented with tonight. That's the resolution that's in front of you has to do with budget changes for the organizational changes. So it would anticipate that those changes would be formalized. And again, my take on that was that this process would in effect formalize the proposed changes. And if we need anything else to clarify that, we can follow up later. So I think essentially you would be approving the changes tonight if you're comfortable with doing that.
Dirk, if I can, I looked at the charter here. It just says the council may, by ordinance, create or abolish departments, offices, or agencies. So not shall, may. So I think we can, if it's the council can approve this, and if you would like a formal ordinance to abolish the city operations department, we can, but it's a may, not a shall.
All right, so then item 7.5, discussion and possible action to make amendments to the 2022 adopted budget for the purpose of organizational changes and unanticipated budget adjustments. Is that the one we're doing here? Okay, so do we have a motion to approve that or a motion to do something else with it?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Do we have any further discussion? All right, may we have a vote, please, Ms. Phillips?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yeah, I'm going to abstain. I just don't have it clear, so I'll abstain on this one.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
And Mayor Baxter?
Yes, thank you. All right, so now we are on to item 10.1, legislative and policy-related hearings. So 10.1.1, a public hearing to consider the commercial parking lot patios, land use and development code, LUDC text amendment.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor Savannah Lytle, Community Development. Just a moment while I share my screen. All right. You guys able to see that?
Yes, we are.
Okay. This is a land use and development code text amendment to allow commercial use of required on-street parking. Yes. The proposed text amendment, again, this was in response to the pandemic in 2020, that under an emergency ordinance, we allowed 25% of required parking on a space to be used as an outdoor patio. And we were not the only city to do this in the nation. This was throughout the United States that this happened, but we saw quite a few here in the city of Durango with great success. So these proposed amendments would allow the emergency ordinance to be pulled and codify the requirements for these outdoor patios. We learned a lot over the last 2 years of what we wanted to see in these patios, what worked, what didn't work, and so then we want to turn these into the text amendments to align them with the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan, as well as any of our character district plans. These amendments have been reviewed and shaped by the Code Alignment Working Group, which is comprised of representatives from multiple city boards and commissions. So the city's land use and development code amendments would be to allow up to 33% of a parking lot to be used as an outdoor patio with a special use permit, and up to 45% with a limited use permit. Within these would be codified additional requirements, and these would be ADA requirements, detectable barriers around the patios. There would be requirements for the furnishings and landscaping to soften the outdoor patios and provide visual interest. There'd be clear pedestrian passages from the building to the patios, lighting guidelines, design guidelines. All of these haven't been there in the past 2 years, and we have had public comment in regard to specific patio, and these weren't in place. So we did get some complaints in regard to the outdoor patios, one in particular. This does support the city comprehensive plan, promoting more attractive development and really enhancing the customer experience, and as well as, and this is also in our strategic plan, is that placemaking and sense of place, and really creating that emotional attachment to place and building, and that is what sense of place is. And so we've really seen that successfully in a couple of our businesses here. This is an example of our local Union Social House that use that outdoor patio. And then also it meets the comprehensive plan in fostering small business retention and expansion, and that is also in the strategic plan as well. And as mentioned, what we saw from the Downtown's Next Step community questionnaire is 77%, the most, said that they wanted more outdoor patios. And so this is a way of allowing businesses that aren't in downtown Main Avenue to have those patios on their private property. And that's the difference of between this and a bump out. The bump outs downtown Main Avenue are on private property. These would still be on public property. On public property, these would be on private property. One of the things that we've received feedback from, and that City Council also received, is there has been a lot of contention between Animal City Brewing and the adjacent residential neighbors that sit right above them on the hill. So there has been a lot of contention there. City Community Development has worked extensively early last spring with both owners of both the business and the residents to come up with a solution. We didn't have the teeth in the land use and development code. We didn't have any regulations codified, so we didn't have a lot to lean on as far as aesthetics or hours. And this is what this land use amendment will allow us to do. But we worked extensively with those two, and we came together with a compliance agreement that was emailed both to the business owner and the residents there, and we did not receive any complaints since that time. So I know that that was something that was included in your packet, was a lot of public comment in regard to Animas City Brewing. So I just wanted to give a little history on that specific business and its outdoor patio. They have to come in for either special use.
It's actually Animas Brewing Company.
Right, I'm so in Animas City right now. I'm sorry, guys. Yes, thank you. I just have Animas City on the brain right now, North Main. So thank you for that correction. So from this, we do have, this was reviewed by Planning Commission, and they recommended approval of the project. So recommended actions are to approve the proposed text amendments with the finding that the proposal is consistent with city policy and standards, amend the proposed text amendment and recommend approval as stated in action 1, or continue the item with specific direction to staff. Staff recommendation and Planning Commission recommendation is by motion, action 1 or 2.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we have anyone in attendance virtually who would like to make a public comment? If you do, please raise your hand. Oops, I saw a hand go up and then go away. There we go. We have a couple of those. Shannon, could you let them in, please, or one at a time?
Yes, Sarah Musil, you are up.
Is this where I could ask if there's any way that we can do something like getting a parking spot for my tenant? Because the Union Social, you know, fills up all around the corner on both sides of the street, which is basically my whole yard.
Right. So this is actually a public hearing to specifically talk about the land use development code change for parking lot patios. But as I mentioned before, if you contact Kevin Hall or Savannah and have the discussion with them, you'll learn about that, how that works.
Okay, so you don't feel like these two things are related?
No, I'm not saying they're not related. They may very well be related, but we have to stay on track with what our agenda says and legally what we're supposed to be doing. So. Okay. I'm sorry, Sarah. That's just how it works.
Okay. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have Carol Clark. Carol, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you, Council. My name is Carol Clark, and I am the owner of the Union Social House. And I wanted to just emphasize some of the struggles that businesses had been going through for the last 2 years and what this means for businesses like us to have the use of the parking lot. We opened in December of 2019, then closed again, or closed for the first time in March of 2020, and then opened in the summer with the use of the parking lot. And it was needed because we were under the 20% usage of inside the building, which means 13 people. So that was very valuable for us to use that. And it became a sense of place for us for North Main to have an outdoor space, which we didn't realize that it was in such high demand. And so then we closed again in November and open again in January, only to use that space again to put up 6 greenhouses, which was also necessary for us to stay open because we were against the 20%, which was only 13 people inside the building. So we have used that space and tremendously for us as far as keeping the business operating. Then we were able to come in this summer again, and we put up a fence and to alleviate any noise and also privacy for our neighbors. And we had such a great response that we put landscaping all around the whole back area, and in order to create a a place, you know, a nice patio to go to. So it has been, for us, a great reward, and it's been something that we are looking forward to using again and still in the future.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Are there any other public comments? Okay, I'll close the public hearing then. Council, do you have any comments or questions for staff on this topic? Please raise your hand if you do already. So Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy.
Thank you. Savannah, thank you for your work on this. And my first question is just enforcement, going from an encroachment or slippage, if you will, 33% to 50% parking spaces being consumed. What are your plans, or how will you work with code enforcement to make certain that all parking is not removed? And I'm not talking just about this. And then my second part of that question is, to Sarah's point, and I also know that Dee Dee Harrow Brown, she wrote in that that was her same concern, was about parking. And it's not any one particular company, but we've heard the same thing about rafting companies in areas and you know, their clients parking in neighborhoods and taking up all available parking. Any thoughts on how to accommodate neighborhoods' needs as well? Thank you.
Yes, all right, I will address the first one in regard to code enforcement. And for this, one thing that we'll have now with the special use permits is it does say in there is language that says if this is violated in any way, then this permit can be pulled. So this isn't just an allowed use. This is either a special use or a limited use. And so we'll be able to go and inspect those. And to your point, we'll now have a list. We currently don't even have a list of how many are being used because we didn't require a permit under the emergency order. So now we can have a list, we can regularly check. And if they are violating not just encroachment, but if they suddenly pulled down their barrier or any of those items, then we can pull the limited use permit or special use permit, and they won't be allowed to have the patio anymore. So it is advantageous for them to maintain those elements that are required by code. As far as the second, that is a larger conversation that we're always challenged with, is parking, and especially in these areas where we're seeing large growth, and North Main particularly. This has come up because for a long time, a lot of vacant buildings up there and not a lot of strong businesses, and now we're just seeing restaurants pop up everywhere, and it's become a very vibrant and successful place. And so it's always one of those things that you're going to encounter in a place that is growing and successful, and it is a larger conversation. For this particular item and these code amendments, it sounds like a lot, 33 to 45%, but most of the requirements are for parking are about 5 spaces. So really we're talking about 1 to 2 parking spaces is what people are using for the patios. So they are required too to add additional bicycle parking. So while we're losing perhaps that 1 space, we're gaining a bunch of seating for these businesses outside. And most of us are familiar with the bump outs downtown and how much seating can fit in 1 parking space. So in the context of these code amendments, we're really only talking about 1 or 2 spaces. Even Union Social House is one space. And so it's not going to have the greater impact on parking, but there is a larger conversation in these areas that are growing so rapidly. And how do we address this so that residents are able to comfortably access their residence?
Councilor Buell?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for your presentation. I just wanted to tie this back to the downtown survey that we were just presented, and how a high number of people wanted more outdoor dining and more outdoor patios. And so I think this goes kind of hand in hand with what our community wants to see. With COVID, I think people want to be outside more and not inside, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I think this is a great addition and a great way for you to track and enforce some of these policies. A lot of the emails we read were about people kind of abusing, potentially maybe using more parking than you were going to allow. And so I think that we'd be remiss not to like pay attention to all the emails we got, especially those businesses that already have parking variances because they're located maybe on the river trail and people bike there more often, or like you said, the North Main, like getting bigger and busier, which is amazing. Just making sure that our communities are happy and feeling like they're being heard. So I think that's super important. Thanks, Savannah.
Councilor Youssef.
Yes, thank you. I think that this is kind of the wave of the future, having these outdoor spaces, these outdoor uses of parking places. It's a different time. I think that we're in a phase where we are trying to get away from so much parking. We've even made the changes with our parking for housing for the same reason, because we needed to address the need for infill and greater density and more housing. I think it holds kind of true in this instance as well. We need to support our businesses. It has had a tremendous impact on their ability to continue to serve the community and to stay viable and sustainable through these difficult times. I do think, though, that our residents are bringing up some really good options potentially that I think we should consider as a council. And it may be difficult, but I do think that looking into a parking permit program possibly over time might be something that we need to do. As we slowly move to this day and age where we're getting less concrete and more use of our spaces for better use, for sense of community and sense of place, that drawback of parking is going to be a reality. And one that I think we might need to address. And I would be willing to at least have the discussion around what the implications of a parking permit program would be for areas that are impacted in this kind of situation. Also want to make sure that we're getting bike racks in there, make sure we have places for bike racks to try to encourage people to get out of their cars and to bike and walk to these locations for eating and visiting. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of support and express my interest in moving in this direction.
Wonderful, thank you. So I think it's wonderful to be encouraging businesses with the outdoor restaurant situation. And I just have a couple of concerns that I've heard from the community and I think, as Councilor Youssef mentioned, it's important to consider those and see if we can find ways to mitigate them. So, one of the things is when people are indoors, whoever's next to them don't hear the noise as much. So now we're having a situation where we have more people out of doors, outside, and in almost, maybe in people's backyards. So I think we need to also look at how do we make sure that the hours of the operation don't exceed, or that the music isn't blaring, those kind of things that impact the community, right? I mean, I know we have that with a couple of the places in town, one downtown and also one right over here. So I think that to be able to, in our use permits, to be able to ensure that we're hitting these areas that don't negatively impact the quality of life of the people who bought a place there or have lived there for years, and now we're making a change to it. I think that's important to be able to do that. As well as a system for neighbors to be able to report challenges for them that are followed up on well. I'm not saying that every complaint is accurate or that every complaint requires a response, but to make sure that people are being heard so that if there's systematic impact, we can do something about it. I also agree parking can be challenging, particularly when something changes, and I too would support looking at parking permits or something similar to that. Living on East 3rd Avenue, we completely understand the challenge with parking, and we've done some conversations with the city about a parking permit program. But at the time, that was kind of just East 3rd Avenue. So now maybe there's a citywide way of making it do it that actually works. I don't know if that's true, but I would support that conversation. The other kind of odd thing for me is we're offering this to restaurants. what about grocery stores that want to put up a fresh fruit market in their parking lot? What about, a clothing store that wants to, or the flower shop that wants to put flowers out in their front parking place to attract people? Because people see people moving around, they actually see stuff out there. Is this something that other communities have dealt with? Like, how do you stop at restaurants? I'm just not certain how that works.
I'm not sure. I have not looked into that aspect of it. I mean, the restaurants, a lot of cities are doing right now, but our emergency order did include retail. So that was something that was under the emergency order, was to allow retail to use 25% of the parking lot. So it is on the table as it's something that's been done.
So maybe the Land Use Development Amendment group might look at that too, since it was on the emergency ordinance, just to see whether or not that's viable or if it's something that no, they wouldn't support or something like that.
Absolutely, that's a great suggestion.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you so much. I think this is really exciting. So I appreciate it. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, so I believe that we're being asked to make a motion. Do you want to put your screen back up, or unless one of the counselors wants
I think I have a motion. I'll move to approve the proposed text amendments with the findings that the proposal is consistent with city policies and standards.
I'll second.
Excellent. You can remove, thank you. Is there any further discussion?
I'd just like to say that the mayor, you raised a good point about making certain that we're consistent with other commercial industries. So I would really welcome looking at going beyond that. And I also would welcome a discussion about a parking permit program. I think there's real merit in what the community is saying to us. So I just wanted to add that during the discussion.
Wonderful. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Mayor, I would just clarify that we will be making some code changes and bringing those back to council. So the approval tonight is really to authorize the drafting of the code changes, and those will come back as an ordinance for first reading down the road.
So do we need to amend the motion?
I think the typical motion here is to draft the proposed code changes and bring an ordinance back to council. It probably does, because we will need to actually draft the changes to the code.
So Dirk, in the agenda documentation, it says set up public hearing to consider text amendments. Is that right? But this is the public hearing.
Yeah, the hearing was tonight.
Yeah.
So
that's why I was confused.
Now we would be moving forward to draft the code changes.
Okay.
So you're asking for approval to approve the draft changes to come back for
make the changes to the code and to bring them back.
Okay.
Because we typically bring back an ordinance with the code changes in it.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so first of all, we have a motion and a second on the table, and I believe that we actually have to make another motion to rescind that motion and approve that, I believe.
Can I do it all at one time?
I don't know. Dirk, you're our legal advisor.
I think at this point you probably should go ahead and just revoke that one and start all over. That's what would be my suggestion. And sorry I didn't pipe up earlier, but apologize for that.
Okay, so do I hear?
I'll move to revoke the current motion.
You were on mute, Melissa.
I'll second, sorry.
Wonderful. Any discussion on that? Okay, so may we have a vote, please, Ms. Phillips?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Okay, so now we need the next motion.
Okay, so I think it would be, I'll move to draft the proposed land use and development code changes and bring back to council.
Okay, I'll second.
Any further discussion on this? Oh, may we have a vote, please, Ms. Phillips?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
And Mayor Baxter?
Yes, thank you. Shannon, could you take Carol Clark's hand down for me so that when we get to the next conversation, thank you very much. So now we're moving on to 10.2 quasi-judicial hearings. 10.2.1, Dirk, do we need to make a motion to continue this? Is that how that works? Or is it just automatically continued?
Let's have a motion to continue it. That way the notice carries over.
Okay, so this would be a public hearing to consider the River Roost minor preliminary subdivision, and the motion would be to continue that to February 1st, 2022.
I'll make a motion to set a public hearing date to consider the River Roost preliminary minor subdivision for February 1st, 2022.
I'll second.
Any discussion? No, may we have a vote, please?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bosman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. On to 10.2.2, a public hearing to consider the Animas City Park Overlook Conceptual and Preliminary PD and Rezone, 150 East 33rd Street and 3215 East 2nd Avenue.
Good evening, Savannah Lytle, Community Development. One moment while I share my screen. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
So this is the Animas, this is where I got it, Animas Park Overlook Conceptual and Preliminary Plan Development and Rezone. Quick context of the area. So this is the corner of East 2nd Avenue and East 33rd Street. These two parcels that are adjacent to Animas City Park over here. So this is some green space with a playground. North City Market is on this part, on these parcels here. And this is the intersection of East 32nd Street and Main Avenue. Yellow Carrots in here, chiropractor. This is an overview. The blue is just on one of these parcels. It's actually both of these parcels. These are both single family residents. The one with the green has since been demolished. The other one is still there. These are apartments to the south, and to the north are townhomes. So it already has a significant multi-family influence in this area. This is all North Main here with the car wash. And then again, City Market is at the intersection of 32nd and Main Avenue. And this is the Animas City Park. So the proposal is to build 22 townhome units and 5 duplexes and 4 triplexes. The duplexes will be a mix of 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units with a total of 17 2-bedroom units and 5 3-bedroom units. 3 of the triplexes will face East 2nd Avenue, so those are these here. And then 3 of the duplexes will face East 33rd Street along here. And then there'll be two duplexes that are on the interior of the lot and 1 triplex also on the interior. The reference for this site plan, the alley is along the top of the page. All of this will be accessed from the alley. There'll be 2 parking lots in this space and then an amenity zone with pedestrian access through the site, which is a requirement of the Land Use and Development Code. There'll be some bicycle racks as well. All of the interior units will have garages underneath in addition. There's the 2 ADA parking spaces, and then they'll also meet the EV standards that were amended last year to require EV readiness and electrical vehicle charging stations on the site and being electrical vehicle ready. So these are the sites of the site plan. This is some of the triplexes that will face East 2nd Avenue. So they are very residential in character with the gable roof, a lot of open fenestration, a lot of windows, pedestrian in scale, and the fact that they have that change in material from the first to second floor. That's a requirement. And then these are the ones that you'll see from East 33rd Street. These are the duplexes that will face are, again, very residential in character, all materials and colors that are traditional to Durango, so very standard. And then these are the interior. As mentioned, there will be garages underneath these units. They're a little bit taller. And then these are the interior, duplexes, not triplexes. Duplexes here that will be on the site. So just a quick overview of elevations and site plans. This does meet the comprehensive plan. This is a future land use map, and the pink is all mixed use. That's all along North Main there, the North Main Character District. You can see that. And then residential high density is the brown. So the future land use code for this is high density, which this does meet with the proposed triplexes and duplexes. This also meets the requirement for infill housing for a comprehensive plan. And then right now, this is zoned EN2, so established neighborhood, which would only allow a couple duplexes. So that is a reason for the rezone, is so that it will meet the comprehensive plan future land use of residential high. So this also meets the North Main Character District Plan that was adopted by City Council. And this is the North Main Avenue Character District. And then these are one of the gateway areas. And one of the recommendations of North Main Character District Plan is to encourage infill along North Main Avenue to support the local neighborhood centers and the local businesses along North Main. And so this fills that requirement for the North Main Character District Plan by encouraging that infill housing along the character district. So this was reviewed with the Land Use and Development Code. It is compatible with the development patterns that are seen in this area. As mentioned, there's already multifamily to both the south and the north, so it fits in there, as well as the commercial that backs up against it on North Main. Public services, it will have easy access to water mains and sewer mains. Engineering has reviewed this with minor comments. It's producing a high quality environment, keeping those high quality materials and along their elevations. They'll have that amenity space in the middle. There is the street capacity for this. No known natural hazards. This is one of the few lots in Durango that is actually on a fairly flat lot, so there's not natural hazards there for this. One of the things that I thought there's public comments, yes. So we did, one of the considerations for this in this plan development was a parking variance of 4 parking spaces for this site. And as mentioned, and we've been talking a lot about this is in North Main, and parking is a consideration. Currently, there are 2 curb cuts, one here and one along East 33rd Street that will be closed off that will allow additional parking. Community development has been working with multimodal to come up with where there are opportunities nearby to put a parking, either a structure or a parking lot to support that additional parking, specifically what we see for Purgatory and the shuttle. That's when a lot of the parking is on the street, is for that shuttle. And so is there a place maybe to the east of City Market, or there is city-owned property on at the corner of Main and 32nd Avenue. So perhaps there's other places that we could put a parking garage that might address the concerns of parking in this area, or as we discussed earlier, perhaps it is a permit system as well. So something that needs to be looked into. In regard to public comment and other agency comments, all other agencies have looked at this, including Durango Fire Protection District, and they were comfortable. They are easily able to get their engines along that alley. That was one of the public comments. So they have looked at this and they can get their fire engines back there. Another comment was that alleys should not be used, and that was per section 4-2-2-5-C. And that is referring to new subdivisions. If a parcel is less or is more than 50 feet long, then it should not have an alley, and you see that in Skyridge. So that section of code that was referenced in public comment does not directly relate to where there is already an alley. It is strongly encouraged if there is an alley, that access is taken off the alley, and that is to decrease the interaction between a pedestrian walking on the sidewalk and a car backing out into the street. We want to decrease those opportunities as much as possible, and so we do encourage that alley access. So I want to address that comment as well. It was also said that it does not meet ADA or electric vehicle charging. It does. That's seen here on this plan. So I just wanted to bring those up as well for the public comments and agency comments that we have for this. One other item is that you guys are familiar with, we discussed briefly with Eva Henson's presentation earlier today, was that this is the opportunity for an urban renewal authority in the North Main Gateway. So this may be a project that can benefit from that and might provide the opportunity for deed restricted housing. That's not part of this review, but it is something that we're excited about this project having the potential to be a part of in the future. So I did briefly want to touch on that and include that. So in reviewing this against the Land Use and Development Code and the North Main Character District Plan and the Comprehensive Plan, recommended action is approve the Animas City Park Overlook Plan development with findings that the plan meets applicable land use and development criteria with the following conditions of approval. Future plan submittals shall be in general conformance with the approved plan and compliance with city development standards. All public improvements shall be to city standards. Completion of all required public improvements shall be secured through a public improvements agreement with adequate security provided. All verbal and graphic representations of the applicants or other agents shall be deemed conditions of approval. And this should be plan development and rezone.
Thank you very much, Savannah. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we have anyone in the attendees who would like to speak to this topic? And if so, please raise your hand. Oh, and then after this, we'll have if there's a presentation by the applicant. No public comment? All right, then I'll close the public hearing. Do we have a presentation by the applicant? I see a hand raised and I'll bet it's Tracy. Nope, it went down. Hand went away. Ah, yes. So I think, and I don't know if Lewis is part of Tracy Reynolds' group or the applicant, or if he wanted to comment during public comment. Shannon, could you let Lewis in and we'll figure that one out first? Hello, Lewis, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Are you part of the applicant or did you want to make a public comment?
A public comment.
Okay, hold on just a second. I need to reopen the public hearing. So, okay, now go ahead, please, Lois.
Yes, I would just caution the city that I use this regularly, and the intersection of East 2nd and 32nd Street is a very dangerous one. It's also very limited because it's, 20 feet from the railroad tracks. There can't be a light put in there. You can't stop people coming down the hill to stop traffic there. We went through all this with the Animas River Trail North segment. So it does present problems, and I am concerned about the increased traffic. There's typically parking on both sides. People being able to access, that live in the Burnett area, anywhere north in there, to be able to access Main Street going south. As you know, it's in the summertime, it's backed up oftentimes to the bridge and across the bridge. And likewise, people that want to go east on 32nd Street from Main Street, it's backed up considerably. So it's really difficult to make that turn in order to go south on Main Street. We do have 36th Street, but as you know, that's a real problem during the spring and summer months and fall because of the blind corner and the excess traffic. So 36th Street really does not serve as a good access point to go south on Main. So we're kind of limited to that East 2nd Avenue and 32nd Street. And I would just caution that be looked into when you're adding high density housing. So roughly, I don't know if you figure 2 cars per unit, but I think that will cause a problem. And it is a very dangerous, East 2nd and 32nd Street to try to, go either way during over half of the year. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
I have T. Reynolds.
Yes, and he is the applicant.
Oh, okay.
So I will close the public hearing and we'll go ahead and bring Tracy and any other applicant, people like Mark that want to speak. Hi, Tracy, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay. Let's see, can you make me presenter?
We'll ask Shannon if we can. Do you want to share your screen? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll work on it.
You should be able to do that shortly.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
We can.
Okay, so just really quickly, I want to show you a few renderings that are kind of a work in progress, but can you see this first one?
Yes.
Okay, so this is looking from north to south, looking across 33rd. We have the 2-story units wrapping the corner, and the 3-story units are tucked back off of the alley. This is a look from kind of the northeast to the southwest. Close-up view, corner of 33rd and East 2nd Avenue. And this would be looking from east to west across East 2nd Avenue. And one more view kind of looking from the northeast to the southwest. So, I think it's going to be a really attractive development. We're doing everything we can to keep the price point down. Working with Scott Shine has been great, with the URA and the potential for TIP financing to provide some workforce housing. We're really excited about that. We've been trying to do that for years, and hopefully this one will become a reality. And that's all the time I'm going to take, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Tracy. If you want to stop screen sharing, we'll go back and ask council if they have questions.
Yes. Okay.
Great, thank you. And council, do you have any questions or comments that you'd like to speak with the applicants about or staff? I see Councilor Bosmans has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I think this is a great opportunity of adding housing in an area that is already in similar use. So I'm very happy to see these units in the stages of design and then hopefully construction. There's one comment I wanted to make on some of the documents. It shows that the URA is planning on forming a urban renewal area and financial incentives for 4 deep restricted housing and 6 resident occupancy units. And I think if something happens with the URA or if this Tracy and the owner wish to move faster and the URA takes too much time or whatever the reason is, the financial incentives and the deed restricted housing, as I understand it, is not dependent on the URA. It will actually be probably easier if it runs just through the council, because there's only 5 people on the council versus 9 people on the URA board. But regardless how that proceeds, I just want to make sure that this is an opportunity to add these 4 deed restricted housing and 6 resident occupancy units with or without the URA, and hopefully we can make it happen to have those units as part of the overall development. Thank you. Thank you for looking at it.
Okay. Councilor Youssef?
Yeah, comment and just a quick question. I'm just so happy to see this rework, and I just want to thank the applicant for coming back with this idea and getting us to a point where we might be able to get some workforce housing. The way I understood it in reading it, the URA was helpful in that it provided the TIF financing, which makes it a reality. And so I also wanted to thank staff for working so hard with them. I would agree that this is a great example of how having staff have time to work with our developers on this gets us to this point where we're reaching some of our goals and objectives around housing. It takes time, it takes effort. All of these take, each process or each project takes work. So I really appreciate it. I believe that I read in the Planning Commission minutes that we were going to need to do a small variance for a couple of the parking spaces. I think it was 3.5 or 2.5, if I'm not, I believe it was for this project. And I just wanted to just kind of talk about that. Given all that we're getting through this project, I would think that may be a small price to pay, but I just wanted to clarify that.
That is correct. So as part of the plan development, there was a proposed variance for the 3.5 spaces, rounding up to 4 spaces for this project. And it was exactly that, is that what we were getting in exchange for that supported the parking, but also where this is located. It's located close to the Animas River Trail. It's located close to North Main and transit stops. So we all felt that informed the decision to support this parking variance as well.
Savannah, can I jump in?
Yes.
Okay, so our original plan, we were not going to ask for a variance because I hate variances. It's always, well, it can be controversial. So our original plan met the parking requirements, and staff came back and said, hey, you know, if you make a few tweaks here and there, you can provide some more open space and green space, and we think it would be an improvement to the project. And we absolutely agree. I have designed so many projects that have ended up being overparked, and I could go on and on about that. But we absolutely agree with staff and feel like that variance makes sense, especially with the amount of on-street parking. I have 2 tenants right there in a duplex, and I'm over there, you know, several times a month. I have never seen a parking problem on the street there. There's always a place to park. So.
Excellent, thank you.
Councilor Buell.
Sure, yes. I'll just add a quick comment. I'm just super excited to see what partnering with the URA can do to help with keeping housing costs down and to fit into our workforce housing goals. Hopefully have a success story under the URA's belt. I love the garage adds to some of the units to help with neighborhood parking concerns. But like we said earlier, North Main may start to feel a little pressure as it develops. So it'll be important for us just to kind of keep a pulse on that and see what we can do to help alleviate some of their concerns.
Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy.
Thank you. I also am pleased to see that we're able to look at this with some potential workforce housing and the benefit that the URA provides to it. With regard to parking though, Savannah, I am intrigued by the city-owned property. I walk that trail pretty regularly and it is unused. And so if there's a way to look at that to provide additional parking. I also want to comment that I know as a city, we've created this wonderful amenity, the extension of the river trail, but it is getting used. I walk that and I see it. and people come, park there, and then walk out to Oxbow and whatnot. So I don't know if part of the solution may be timed parking or issues along that way, and also to address the park and drive and then carpool up to Purgatory issue. I know that City Market also has that same kind of issue. So I recognize that with density, until we get to us all being riding our bikes and walking, and that's not realistic for everyone, we do need to look at the impact on the neighborhood. So I would welcome some ideas for that site. And also if there's a way to address long-term parking on that street that's not by the residents, and it comes back to a possible parking permit program in that area.
So I just had a couple of questions. I wanted to point out that if I read this correctly, each of these units will be wired for future solar possibility?
Yes, correct.
Awesome, that's great. That really helps with our sustainability conversation. I love it.
We're also looking into some grant programs to provide them from the start.
Excellent, that's a great idea. So Tracy, I love the drawings that you had, and the rock mulch you were showing is more like river rock. I think that's really appropriate. The place on 14th Street that you did that has rock mulch there is more like gravel, kind of like granite gravel. And I think that, are you going to be able to flow with that more river rock look?
We could definitely do that, yeah, not a problem.
That would be awesome. I think it's much more attractive than what's over there.
Sure.
So as far as parking, I also think this might be an opportunity to do a public-private partnership with Purgatory and see if they're willing to help us out in development of a parking space or something, because it is a direct benefit to them that our residents of the community are using parking in that area to shuttle. And I know I'm guilty at times of that. So I would love to see a partnership with Purgatory to make that happen. And those were, for now, my only comments. Anybody else? More comments? Nope. Okay, then we're looking for a motion. Bring that back up and let the councilors has it. I know Jessica always do that.
I'll move to approve the Animas City Park conceptual and preliminary plan development and rezone with the finding that the proposal complies with the City of Durango Land Use and Development Code and the Durango Comprehensive Plan, subject to the conditions as stated in the December 6, 2021 Planning Commission staff report and discussed at this public meeting.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? So something I forgot to say, I just want to support what other councilors said. I think this project combined with the URA capability in providing workforce housing and deed restricted housing, I look forward to seeing this be accomplished so that we can move forward with our goals. I love it. It's awesome. Thank you. Any other comments? No, may we have a vote, please, then?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy?
Yes.
And Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Thank you very much. That passes. Okay, I'm just trying to make sure that I've had so many different pieces of paper today with all the things we've done. I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Okay, so that's that one. We're on to item 12, general business items. 12.1, discussion and possible action to revise trash recycling rates. Am I on the right agenda?
Yes, Mayor, you are, and I believe we have Allison Baker to do a presentation on this item.
Hi, councilors and Mayor. Allison Baker, Public Works Director. And I am bringing the proposed resolution that is the result of the rate study that was done by
Allison, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry. I hadn't realized that we had 3 topics here, plus our boards and commissions. How does council feel about taking a 3-minute break so we can take care of a few things and come back? Okay, so we're going to take a 3-minute break. We'll be back. Okay, so we are on to 12.1, discussion and possible action to revise trash recycling rates. I'm sorry, Allison, I interrupted you, but go ahead.
No problem. I'm Allison Baker, Public Works Director, and I'm presenting a resolution amending trash collection and recycling fees that is based on the recycle and trash rate study that Levi and consultant presented back in November, and the council voted upon at that point to proceed. So this just works it out into the per week charges and per lift charge, and every bit and piece and details it out for consideration as a resolution.
Okay, so what we're looking for here is a motion to approve or not to approve, or whichever. Is that what you're asking for?
Do we have public hearing requirement on that, or can we move forward directly since it was already?
No, yeah, the council's already approved this in concept.
Okay.
So this would be resolution R 2022-5, and you can adopt it tonight.
Great. So it's 2022-5.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve resolution number R 2022-5.
Second.
Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, I'll make it.
Please, if you do, please raise your hand so I can make sure I recognize people in the order in which they raise their hands. Thank you. Councilor Bosmans?
I'll make a short comment. I'm going to vote against this resolution. We've, similar as on my prior meeting, I believe, one of the reasons is I couldn't read the data, and it's a bit unclear with the coloring. And it also appears that the actual 2021 revenues of about 3.3 million are above budget. The actual discussion, the actual result of above the actual the expenses. Man, let me rephrase that here. Excuse me. The actual 2021 revenues of about 3.3 million are above budget, and the actual expenses of 2.76 million are below budget, which resulted in instead of a loss of 34,000 that was mentioned during the rate discussions, and the actual result being a positive balance of $587,000. So the fund balance is 2.5 million, which is almost the same as the annual operating expenses, versus during that rate discussion it being 1 million. Of course, it's a good surprise that we have 2.5 million in fund balance versus 1 million as anticipated. It's also a great situation that we have more income than expenses, but it's just difficult to justify rate increases with these differences. And I continue to have a hard time explaining to our residents how we are working on the cost of living in Durango, try to help the lower income families while we either have high rates or keep increasing rates, and at the same time have relatively high fund balances. So that is my reason why I will vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. So before staff responds, someone has noise going on in the background and it's bleeding through, and they weren't on mute. So just so you know, I don't know who that is. But so Allison, did you want to respond to Councilor Bosman's comment? I know, I see you.
Yes, just I don't have the details of the operating budget. I've got the OpenGov, which I suspect is what you're looking at as well. So I know the current status of trash and recycle, but I was not part of this rate study, so I really can't speak to that. I just sharing that this is fairly new to me in this particular division.
If I may, Council, just to let you know, Allison, as the Public Works Director, just took over trash and recycling when the study was done. It was done with Levi Lloyd and Joy Medina. Obviously, solid waste right now has been hit with some COVID areas and issues, so they're out and coming back and forth. However, there was extensive discussion with the consulting group that took a look at the rate analysis, provided the background for it, came to the council twice for discussion. I think good discussion was had, and the reasoning for the rising cost, as well as some capital needs that were coming up front in the future, were the reasons and the recognition of needing a increase in the trash and recycling rates.
Councilor Noseworthy.
Yes, Councilor Bosmans, I'm not certain if you remember, but during that discussion, we talked, Levi talked about the need for a larger transfer recycling station, and that he had not had any significant CIPs in recent years, but part of this surplus was to actually, if I'm remembering correctly, and I do believe I am, to be prepared to address the need for a larger transfer station. So I think this is part of it. We did vote on this, so this is just a clarification. That vote did pass, and this is just a clarification of how you want it worded, if I understand correctly. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Olivier, did you want to speak again, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. It is my understanding that the transfer and recycling station was not part of this, not to be financed. This was not part of this rate increase. But that's all water under the bridge. I just wanted to explain why I vote no to the audience or the public.
Okay, any further discussion? Olivier, could you lower your hand, please, for me? Thank you. May we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
No.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Thank you. The motion passes. We're on to 12.2. Final approval ordinance 2022-1, amending Chapter 25, Article 3, Section 25-114 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Durango for the purpose of modifying sewer rates for residential, commercial, and industrial users of the wastewater system within the City of Durango service area and declaring an effective date.
Yes, Mayor and Council, as you recall at the last meeting, this was asked to be placed not on consent but regular. There were some questions in regards to information that had been presented to the IAB in November, and we have Jared Biggs, our Assistant Finance Director, to clarify what was presented and help the Council understand what was presented and the reasons for those numbers. And I'll pass it off to Jared.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. So I had shared a memo trying to summarize the discussion that was held at that meeting on 11/8 of last year. And in that, I did work to discuss how we constructed the financial summary that I believe Councilor Bosmans was identifying as confusing, at least in part, in the last meeting. I did present how we constructed that. We did that last October, and we have developed better numbers as the budget continued. And even tonight, looking at what Devin had presented with where we're getting to year-end close, our revenues were a little lower than we had expected. Our expenditures were lower than we expected as well. But ultimately, this amendment, after all the discussion with the IAB, it came down to, do we or do we not want to hedge against inflation? I I think the inflationary number that came out the day the IAB met in November was at 6.6%, and I included that in the memo. And we were asking for a 3% adjustment simply because we know costs are rising, and we wanted to hedge against that in some manner. It was explained to the IAB that we can meet both the debt service coverage ratio and the fund balance requirements of our debt with no increase. But again, the discussion led us to, should we at least put in some hedge against inflation or not? And it was decided at a 4-1 vote to proceed with a 3% inflationary adjustment only on the base fees, not on the usage charges for sewer. And I'm happy to answer any detailed questions from the memo or any others that arise.
So are there questions for staff from council? Once again, please raise your hand if you have one. All right, so then my assumption here is that we need to do a motion either to do final approval on Ordinance O 2022-1 or not. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve final resolution O 2022-1, I believe you said it was. Is that correct? Yes, and make that motion, please.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Bosmans.
Yeah, it's becoming a habit, but I'm going to vote no against this increase for similar reasons as before. I'll just want to explain why I vote no for the record and for the public. I think they have a right to know. The reason is that what the IAB, the Infrastructure Advisory Board, was presented at the time was showing a loss, a sewer fund balance of minus 700,000, while the actual sewer fund balance shows, based on the budget, the adopted budget for 2022, shows a surplus of 5.33 million. So that's 6 million difference. I think that the Infrastructure Advisory Board, these are all professional people, they know the details on how the structure works, should have had more clear information. I appreciate, Jared, very much the memo you sent as part of this agenda package. Unfortunately, I don't think using 2014, I think, numbers, to start off with and then hand calculate it towards the current year is the best way to move forward, and hopefully we can use numbers from the CAFR as well as for more recent years the finance department. So I would have liked to have seen this issue, this potential rate increase, go back to the Infrastructure Advisory Board for their proper recommendation, and that's my opinion. It doesn't happen, so that's why I will vote no on this topic.
Councilor Youssef, I noticed you had your hand raised earlier. Did you want to speak?
I wanted to thank staff for their clarification on providing the document of how the balance was arrived at, even though they were prior years, like Councillor Bosmans has suggested. It's really helpful to see it in that way, and I would encourage you to please help us see that going forward, because I can see this is exactly why it's so difficult. Thank you for taking the time to clarify that. Thank you also for taking the time, staff, on working hard with council to understand this better, to communicate it such that the IAB could really make an informed decision. I place a lot of value on all of the IAB members who are looking at these issues so closely. I think we have a very good team of residents there, and it makes a big difference, who are working on behalf of the city. Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the extra time and providing us with more information, so thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy.
I also want to thank the staff and recognize that there's just been a significant improvement in the past 2 years in finances for the city. Everything from the way the budget's handled, the way the budget can be looked at, with the way we are questioning the numbers of certain reserve funds and others. And so I think it's in the spirit of continuous improvement, but I also want to recognize that there was a very strong discussion that I participated in. And I think that the minor raise that this is presenting and the fact that it's also putting some of the onus on second homeowners who may not necessarily be contributing to the sewer as much as others, it will have my support. So thank you. I want to thank the staff, and I want to recognize the huge progress that's been made in the past 2 years on our financial transparency, accountability, and just management. Thank you to staff.
You know, I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit, Barbara, because I agree. I think our financial reporting and the financial understanding of the council as well as the community is getting even better now. And I think that there's still a slight misunderstanding about the difference between what a CAFR number is and what a budget number is and what a financial statement number is, and why they don't always agree. They can be reconciled to each other because it's very, what's the right word? It's very regulatory why they're like that. So they can be reconciled to each other. And I do think that that's one of the challenging things to understand is why numbers can be different. But there's a reason for it, and it's generally government regulations. It's not our choice. So learning to understand the difference between the two and how they affect operations and capital is definitely a learning process. So I really appreciate the work that the finance department has put in as well as our staff. So thank you. Any further comments? And so we have a motion, if I remember correctly. May we have a vote, please?
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Thank you. That passed. On to 13.1, discussion and possible action regarding the joint city-county appointment to the Durango-La Plata County Airport Commission.
Should I?
I don't know. Was this, let me see whose name is on here. Because it.
Got you, Mayor.
Okay, great, perfect. You're right.
I think it was just a follow-up item from last time. I think there was supposed to be an interview for some of the candidates. So.
Yes, I didn't know if you'd had a conversation with anyone else. So Councilor Buell and I were appointed to the subcommittee to interview with the county for the joint city-county position on the La Plata, the Airport Commission. And unfortunately, I did not get that calendared, and so I did not make that meeting. So Councilor Buell did all the heavy lifting and made it work for us. So I'm going to let her report back what happened, and then we can either make a motion to concur with that or make another choice.
Sure. So it was a perfect fit. I've sat on the airport commission since I was elected. And so I've seen Gary Jerk in action. Honestly, his interview went great, and I believe he's invaluable to the airport commission. A little background, just so you guys have it, just kind of brief. He's been on the airport commission since 2009. He has been through like the original just renovation ideas, and then when they were going to do the expansion on the other side of the runway. And now, he's a part of the process of the terminal expansion and design that's going on right now. He actually sits on the subcommittee for that. So we have the airport commission, and then there's a few of us that sit, not me, actually, not us, but a few sit on the subcommittee for that, and he's on there. Between his passenger experience, from his work, and the ideas he brings to the airport commission, his business background, he's a really great asset to the team. he has some great ideas for food and beverage development. Right now we have that, it's in the Spring Up area, the temporary one. And he has some great ideas for more permanent stuff there as the airport expansion goes on. He wants Durango to, he knows that the airport is the first and last impression that Durango makes on a lot of people, especially obviously traveling through the airport, and he wants it to be the best it can be. And so I think bringing that to the table, really sets him apart, especially since he goes through airports all the time. He, wants, better passenger experience, more level of services. It was a good interview with the commissioners and myself and Gary, and I fully 100% support his appointment in terms of the joint appointment for the Durango-La Plata Airport County Airport Commission. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Do you have any questions for Councilor Buell? Do you want to go ahead and make a motion then?
Sure. I'll move to confirm the joint appointment to the Durango-La Plata County Airport Commission to Gary Dirk.
And I'll second.
Any further discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Thank you. That passes. So now we're on to 13.2 Board and Commission Council Liaison Reports. Councilors? Anyone? Okay, well, I have a couple of them, as usually happens. I'm the off schedule from the rest of you. So I attended the Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission meeting on January 5th, and it was a very interesting meeting because they were having a discussion about becoming a part of the election judging team and supporting our elections in our community. And so they were going to take a tour of the voting facilities in the process and then see how many of them were interested in signing up and helping our democratic voting conversation. And then also they're planning an event at Snowdown. So it'll be a COVID-friendly event, meaning outside, distantly separated, although it will, I believe, be the hands on the cop car competition again this year. So that's pretty entertaining. They're very excited about that. And then also, let me check the date here. The High School Council of Excellence is on the 20th of January. So I'm sure we'll be getting more information about that. So that was, it was great. It was really fun, and I really enjoyed going to that. I also did the Natural Lands Preservation Advisory Board meeting, and we were presented with economic impact study of the Durango Parks and Recreation, which council will be seeing at our, I believe, our next meeting on February 1st. So that was very interesting. And then Maura Compton from the board of Durango Mesa Park Foundation, as well as Turi and Scott, what's Scott's last name? Scott McLean. Sorry, it's getting late. Scott McLean all went to Bentonville, Arkansas, and rode the systems, the mountain bike systems out there, and it goes through several different communities. It was really exciting because each community kind of has a different focus about what the mountain biking and the hiking and the walking are done, and they incorporate it with things like one place has a walk-up coffee and beer joint, I believe it is, but you can't get there by car. You either have to walk in or you have to ride your bike in. So that's kind of exciting. And so there's a lot of things that are like that, like a kids' play park. There's a dog park that are all in these areas. So it isn't just about mountain biking, and they're also about different skill levels of everything, different skill levels of hiking, biking, all of that. So that group is working together to have a plan built in order to provide those kind of recreational amenities up at Durango Mesa Park. So I'm really looking forward to the next presentation when we get some more drawings on the ground, if you will. And that was really the gist of the meeting. So that's all I have. Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy, yes.
Yes, I just wanted to report on a few meetings and items. The working group that came out of the Wildfire and Watershed Protection Fund, we had our meta meeting, which I reported the other week about all of the almost 18 groups that came together. And then we came together with the county and a smaller group. And we came back with, again, a goal to have a map that kind of talks about who's doing what, where, but also that's based on identified priorities. And the priorities that both Marcia Porter Norton and I talked about are life. You have to, everybody was talking about, well, there's priorities of life and water and assets and wildlife. And yes, they're all important, but we ended up kind of talking about, if you can only address some things, you need to address life, human safety and assets, and then looking at the other issues. So kind of coming up with a prioritization of where we work, a sense of how that affects how we apply for funding and how we do it as a group, a communication plan around that areas, and then addressing evacuation routes. We did raise that and a real concern for that, for the whole community. And then coming up from that group with a top 10 shovel-ready projects so that when the funding is available, we are ready to pitch something and ideally get some funding for that. So that group is coming along. Tomorrow, I believe Jessica and I are the working group on really looking at what's a sustainable healthcare system for our community. And I don't know if you've been reading in the paper with the issues around burnout and just staffing concerns around COVID. But that meeting we'll be looking at tomorrow. I will say that I was out today getting a bit of fresh air, and I did run into an ICU nurse and asked that person at Mercy, what's life like right now? And they really talked about how difficult it is right now, and the desire to offer really good care and what the things that we can be doing to help them do their work. And also just concern for people who may not come to the hospital with COVID, but have heart conditions, an accident, something else, and the impact on the community. So I did just want to remind folks that the website for getting COVID testing is up and running. I tested it out this afternoon, and it's covidtest.gov. And you can get online and order testing, free testing to come to your home I think it's 4 tests per unit to start. And I think that the things we can be doing to protect our community are important, and I appreciate everyone's effort around that. Thank you.
Councilor Youssef.
Thank you. Oops, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Chamber board meeting today, they had an interesting study that I thought you might be interested in. It was a COVID study, and it was a couple questions. They asked, do you think there should be a reinstated indoor mask mandate for La Plata County? They had 280 survey people that this went out to, businesses that this went out to, 116 replies. 43% suggested no. Yes, they did want a reinstated indoor mask mandate. 56% said no. I just found that interesting. Is your business being impacted by the recent rise in COVID cases? 57% said yes, 42% said no. That's not too surprising. Have any of your employees missed work due to recent rising COVID cases? 54% said yes, 45% said no. And has the shortage of labor impacted your business? 56% said yes, 43% said no. So I just thought that was interesting, especially regarding the reinstated indoor mask mandate with a yes of only 43%, because I had actually asked Jack and a few other local business owners what their thoughts were regarding that with the recent surge. So I wanted to bring that up and also just mention the letter we've received from BID asking us to look into public input regarding the fire station and developments around that. I want to hope that we have some opportunities to make sure we allow public comment for that. Thank you.
Councilor Bosman.
I have only one meeting to provide an update on, which is the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting that took place on January 12th. It covered the Tree City USA application and an update from the community forestry. There was discussion on outdoor pickleball courts, updates on projects and programs. And interesting enough, we had the same presentation as Mayor Baxter just summarized on the economic impact study by the Parks and Rec, as well as information on Bentonville, Arkansas, the bike park development, and Durango Mesa Park. So I think that was well summarized. Thank you.
Any other comments by council or staff?
Have a good evening.
Yes, Mr. Madrigal.
Oh, just was saying, have a good evening.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Thank you, and we'll adjourn this meeting.